Story 1. After 8 years of raising my sister's kids when she disappeared, she returned and they said I was just the uncle who babysat. I stayed quiet as they all laughed. 2 days later, the eldest asked, "You're still paying for my wedding, right?" I smiled and said, "Of course." Then I sent a $1 check with a note saying, "For babysitting services," and cut off access to their college funds, cars, and credit cards I'd been paying for. By morning, my phone was flooded with messages from my sister and the kids, suddenly wanting their babysitter back. You want to know the moment I realized 8 years of my life had been a complete joke? It was when my 19-year-old niece Emma looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're still paying for my wedding, right?" While her mother, my sister Sarah, laughed and added, "Of course he is. That's what babysitters do, right? Help out where they can." They all thought it was hilarious. Standing in Sarah's newly renovated kitchen, the one I'd helped pay for while she was finding herself across 3 different states, watching them treat me like the family ATM who'd been gracious enough to keep their kids alive while she played vanishing act. 8 years. 8 years of parent-teacher conferences, midnight hospital runs, teaching them to drive, helping with homework, being the one they called dad until she walked back in 6 months ago like nothing had happened. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you exactly how I ended up being the world's most expensive babysitter. It started on a Tuesday in October, 8 years ago. I was 32, finally getting my life together after a messy divorce, when Sarah showed up at my apartment at 11 p.m. with 3 kids in tow. Emma was 11, Jake was 9, and little Mia was barely 6. They looked exhausted, clutching garbage bags full of clothes, and Sarah had that manic energy she got when she was about to do something catastrophic. "I need you to watch them for a few weeks," she said, already pushing past me into my 1-bedroom apartment. "Maybe a month. I got this opportunity in Portland, and I can't take them right away." The kids were quiet, too quiet. Mia was gripping a stuffed elephant like her life depended on it, and Jake kept looking at his shoes. Emma, even at 11, had this look like she was bracing for another disappointment. "Sarah, what opportunity? What are you talking about?" She waved her hand dismissively, already pulling out her phone. "This guy I met, Marcus. He's got connections in the art world. Really thinks I have potential. But his place is tiny, and you know how kids complicate things." Kids complicate things. That's how she talked about her own children. Like they were inconvenient furniture she needed to store somewhere. I should have said no. Should have called social services, should have forced her to figure it out. But one look at those 3 kids, standing in my living room like refugees, and I heard myself saying, "Okay. A few weeks." Sarah was gone by morning. Left a note on my kitchen counter with a phone number that went to voicemail after 2 days. The few weeks turned into months, the months turned into years, and somewhere along the way, I stopped being Uncle David and became, well, everything else. I got a bigger apartment first, then a house with a yard when Mia started asking why she couldn't have friends over like normal kids. I learned to braid hair when Emma's teacher mentioned she always looked unkempt. I taught Jake to throw a football when he came home crying because the other kids said he threw like a girl. I sat through dance recitals and baseball games and endless parent-teacher conferences where I had to explain, again, why I was the one showing up instead of their mother. The hardest part wasn't the money, though there was plenty of that. Private schools because their neighborhood school was underfunded. Therapy for all 3 kids because abandonment does things to children that toys and ice cream can't fix. Cars when they turned 16, college funds, health insurance, clothes, food, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. I calculated it once, roughly $300,000 over 8 years. But that's not the hard part. The hard part was watching them grow up calling me David while their friends called their parents mom and dad. The hard part was Emma at 13, sobbing in my arms because she thought her mother left because she wasn't pretty enough. The hard part was Jake at 16, getting arrested for shoplifting and calling me from jail because he didn't know who else to contact. The hard part was Mia, now 14, writing an essay about her guardian for school and having to explain to her teacher why her family situation was so complicated. Sarah called exactly twice in 8 years. Once when Emma was 15, asking if I could loan her $5,000 because she was having a hard time. I told her she could have it if she came home to see her kids. She hung up. The second time was when Jake graduated high school last year. She wanted pictures for her Facebook page. Said she was proud of her boy and how well he'd turned out. Then, 6 months ago, she showed up again. Same way she'd left, unannounced, dramatic, acting like she'd been gone for a weekend instead of 8 years. "I'm back," she announced, standing on my front porch with a suitcase and a new boyfriend named Derek. "I've got my life together now. Missed my babies so much." The kids' reactions were complicated. Emma, now 19 and in her sophomore year of college, went cold. Polite but distant. Jake, 17 and about to graduate, was angry but trying to hide it. And Mia, 14 and the one who'd suffered most from the abandonment, was desperate for her mother's approval in a way that broke my heart. Sarah moved into a nice apartment across town, funded by Derek, apparently, and suddenly wanted to be Mother of the Year. She started showing up to Jake's basketball games, posting pictures on social media about her amazing kids, and talking about how hard it had been to be separated from them. The revisionist history was breathtaking. According to Sarah's new narrative, she'd been forced to leave for work opportunities, had sent money regularly, she hadn't, and had been in constant contact, she hadn't. I became David, who helped out while I was working out of state. The kids, hungry for their mother's attention after 8 years, started playing along. It stung, but I told myself it was natural. They wanted their mother back. I was just the uncle who'd stepped in during a crisis. That's what family does, right? You help out when needed, and you don't keep score. Except I was keeping score. And the ledger was about to come due. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago at Sarah's housewarming party. She'd invited the whole family, plus Derek's friends, plus some new friends she'd made. The house was nice, 3 bedrooms, granite countertops, the works. Derek had money, apparently. Oil industry something or other. I walked in and immediately felt like an outsider. Sarah was playing hostess, talking about her beautiful home and her wonderful children. Emma was there with her boyfriend Trevor, a decent kid whose parents I'd met multiple times at college events. Jake brought his girlfriend Amy, who I'd driven to the emergency room last year when she broke her wrist skateboarding with him. Mia was curled up on the couch, quiet as always when there were too many adults around. Derek's friends were the kind of people who talked loudly about their investments and their vacation homes. They kept asking Sarah how she'd raised such well-adjusted kids as a single mother. She soaked up the praise like a plant getting water after a drought. It wasn't easy, she said, one hand on Emma's shoulder. But we made it work, didn't we, kids? Emma nodded. Jake mumbled agreement. Mia just stared at her phone. One of Derek's friends, a loud guy named Brad, raised his beer. Here's to Sarah, who proves that good parenting pays off. Everyone toasted. I stood there holding my water and wondering if I was losing my mind. Was I really the only one who remembered the last 8 years? Then Derek's wife, Linda, asked the question that started everything unraveling. Sarah, how did you manage the logistics? I mean, 3 kids and a career? That's so impressive. Sarah laughed, and I could see her calculating the best way to answer. Well, I was lucky. My brother David helped out a lot. He's great with kids, really more of a babysitter than anything else. It takes a village, you know? Babysitter. 8 years of my life, $300,000, countless sleepless nights and worried days, and I was a babysitter. But it got worse. David was so helpful, Sarah continued, warming to her theme. I mean, he didn't have kids of his own, so it gave him something to do. Really, I think we helped each other out. I got to focus on my career, and he got to play dad for a while. Play dad. Like it was a hobby. Like bedtime stories and homework help and emergency room visits were some kind of game I'd been playing. The kids didn't contradict her. Emma nodded along. Jake looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Mia, my sensitive Mia who still crawled into my bed during thunderstorms, just kept staring at her phone. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood there looking at myself in the mirror, wondering when I'd become such a fool. When I came back out, Sarah was telling another story about her challenges as a working single mother and how grateful she was for family support. I should have left then. Should have walked out and gone home and spent the evening watching the game like a normal person. Instead, I stayed. I stayed and listened and smiled when appropriate and played the role of the helpful brother who'd pitched in during tough times. The real knife twist came when I was helping clean up. Emma cornered me in the kitchen while I was loading the dishwasher. Hey David, she said casually, like she was asking about the weather. You're still paying for my wedding, right? I stopped with my hand on a plate, trying to process what she'd just said. Your wedding? Yeah, Trevor proposed last month. We're thinking next spring. Mom said you'd probably want to help out financially, since you don't have kids of your own to spend money on. There it was. The casual assumption that my money was their money. The dismissal of everything I'd done as just helping out. The complete rewriting of history that turned me from their primary parent into their generous uncle. Of course, I heard myself say. I'd be happy to help. Emma hugged me, and for a second, I remembered the 11-year-old who used to fall asleep in my lap during movie nights. Then she pulled back and smiled. You're the best, David. I don't know what we'd do without our favorite babysitter. She said it with love, but the word hit like a physical blow. Babysitter. That's all I was. That's all I'd ever been. Sarah appeared in the kitchen doorway, laughing. Did Emma tell you the good news? Our girl's getting married. Isn't that exciting? Very exciting, I managed. And so sweet of you to offer to help with costs. You're always so generous with money. I guess that's what happens when you don't have your own family to spend it on. They both laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. Like my childless state was a quirky personality trait that made me the perfect family ATM. I finished loading the dishwasher in silence while they planned Emma's wedding with my money. When I left that night, I hugged all 3 kids goodbye and told Sarah I'd had a wonderful time. Then I went home and did something I hadn't done in 8 years. I added up every receipt, every payment, every expense I'd covered for those kids. Not because I wanted to be repaid, you don't keep score with family. But because I wanted to understand exactly how much my babysitting services had cost me. The number was staggering. Beyond the $300,000 I'd estimated, there were things I hadn't thought about. The larger apartment and house payments, extra $60,000. The family health insurance plan, $40,000. The family car insurance, $20,000. Groceries, utilities, clothes, shoes, school supplies, medical bills, therapy bills, tutoring, sports fees, dance classes, summer camps. By the time I finished, I was looking at nearly $500,000. $500,000 of babysitting. But it wasn't really about the money. It was about Emma asking for wedding money in the same breath as calling me a babysitter. It was about Jake posting pictures with Sarah on social media with captions like "my amazing mom" while I was still paying his car insurance. It was about Mia, who still called me when she had nightmares, publicly referring to me as mom's helpful brother. That's when I decided to have a little fun with the situation. I went to the bank the next morning and had them cut a check for exactly $1. In the memo line, I wrote babysitting services, Emma's wedding contribution. I put it in a nice card, one of those expensive ones with the embossed lettering, and wrote a note inside. "Dear Emma, congratulations on your engagement. As discussed, here's my contribution to your wedding. After careful consideration of my 8 years of babysitting services, I feel this amount accurately reflects the level of family appreciation I've received. I hope it helps with your special day. Love, your favorite babysitter, Uncle David." I drove to her apartment and slipped it under her door. Then I went home and made a series of phone calls. First, I called the bank and froze the college funds I'd set up for all 3 kids. Not closed, frozen. They could be unfrozen with my authorization. Second, I called the insurance company and removed all 3 kids from my car insurance policy. Jake's car, Emma's car, and the car I'd bought for Mia when she turned 16 last month, all uninsured as of midnight that day. Third, I called the credit card companies and canceled the supplemental cards I'd given each kid for emergencies. The cards that had paid for gas, groceries, clothes, and Emma's spring break trips. Fourth, I called my financial advisor and moved Emma's wedding fund, $25,000 I'd been saving since she turned 18, into my retirement account. Finally, I called the property management company that handled Sarah's apartment rent. The rent that came out of my account every month because Derek's oil money apparently didn't stretch to housing costs. I canceled the automatic payment. Then I turned off my phone and went to bed. I woke up to silence, which should have been my first clue. My phone usually buzzed with text messages from the kids, reminders about games or events, requests for money, general check-ins. When I turned it on around 9 a.m., the screen exploded with notifications. 17 missed calls. 32 text messages. 4 voicemails. The messages told a story. It started with Emma, around 7 a.m. "David, I think there's been a mistake with this check you sent me. Can you call me?" Then, an hour later, "David, this isn't funny. Obviously there's been some kind of mix-up." Jake's messages started around 8. "Dude, my card got declined at the gas station. Something wrong with the account? David, seriously, I'm stuck at the gas station. Can you call the bank? This is crazy, my car insurance got canceled too. Can you fix this?" Mia's messages were the hardest to read. "David, I'm confused. My card doesn't work and mom is yelling at someone on the phone. Did something happen? Are you okay? You're not answering. I'm scared. Everyone's upset and I don't understand why." But it was Sarah's messages that told me everything I needed to know about who I really was to this family. The first one, sent at 8:30 a.m. "David, the kids are saying their cards don't work and there's some issue with insurance. Please call me immediately." 9:15 a.m. "This is not the time for jokes, David. Emma showed me that ridiculous check. Whatever point you think you're making, you've made it. Now fix this." 9:45 a.m. "I'm at the bank and they're saying you froze the kids' college funds. This is insane. You can't just steal their money because you're having some kind of breakdown." 10:30 a.m. "Derek says you stopped paying my rent too. Are you trying to make me homeless? After everything I've been through? How could you be so vindictive?" 11 a.m. "Call me now. The kids are panicking, I might lose my apartment, and this family is falling apart because you decided to have a tantrum. This isn't who you are, David." But the message that made everything crystal clear came at 11:47 a.m. "Look, if this is about money, we can work something out. Maybe we didn't appreciate everything you did enough. The kids want to talk to you. They're sorry if they hurt your feelings. We need our David back. Please. Our David. Not their uncle, not their family member. They're David. The man who fixed problems and paid bills and disappeared into the background when real family showed up. I made myself coffee and read through the voicemails. Emma crying, Jake angry, Mia confused and scared. Sarah alternating between furious and pleading. All of them wanting their reliable David back, the one who asked for nothing and gave everything. I set the phone down and walked out to my backyard. It was a nice backyard, big enough for the kids to play in when they were younger, with a swing set I'd built for Mia and a basketball hoop I'd installed for Jake. I'd spent a lot of hours out here over the years, pushing swings and playing catch and teaching Emma to drive in the driveway. Good memories. Real memories. But apparently, to everyone else, they were just the fond recollections of a helpful babysitter. My phone started ringing again. Sarah's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. David, please. I know we messed up. The kids are devastated. Emma's been crying all morning, and Jake is talking about dropping out of school because he can't afford it now. Mia doesn't understand what's happening. This isn't fair to them. Whatever your problem is with me, don't take it out on the kids. They love you. We all love you. Just. Please call me back. They love you. Past tense when she thought I wasn't listening, present tense when she needed something. I called back. David, thank goodness. Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said calmly. I got exactly the message you all intended. What are you talking about? The kids are scared. Emma thinks you hate her. I don't hate anyone, Sarah. But I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what my role in this family actually is. There was a pause. I could hear voices in the background, Emma crying, Jake talking loudly. David, you're their uncle. Your family. You know that. Am I? Because at your party, you made it pretty clear I'm just the helpful babysitter. Emma called me the favorite babysitter. You laughed about how I don't have kids of my own, so I have extra money lying around. Everyone seemed to think that was pretty accurate. We were just. People were asking questions, and I was trying to keep things simple. You know how complicated the real story is. The real story? The real story is that I've been their father for 8 years while you were off finding yourself. The real story is that I've spent nearly $500,000 raising your children. The real story is that I've been to every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every hospital visit while you posted pictures on Facebook about being a proud mom. Silence on the other end. But you know what? You're right. It is complicated. So let me make it simple. I'm done being the family ATM. I'm done being the babysitter who's expected to clean up everyone's problems with his checkbook. If you want to be their mother, be their mother. All of it. The grocery bills and the car insurance and the college tuition and the wedding costs. All of it. David, you can't just abandon them. They depend on you. Like you depended on me? Like when you left them on my doorstep and disappeared for 8 years? That kind of depending? That's not fair. I was going through a hard time. I did what I thought was best for everyone. And now I'm doing what I think is best for everyone. I'm stepping back to my proper role as the generous uncle who helps out occasionally. Just like you wanted. I could hear Emma in the background, asking to talk to me. My heart clenched, but I stayed strong. Sarah, here's what's going to happen. The college funds will stay frozen until further notice. The kids can get their own car insurance and credit cards. Emma can pay for her own wedding, or you can pay for it, but my babysitting budget is tapped out. And you can find a new way to pay your rent. You're punishing them for something I did 8 years ago. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just declining to continue paying for a family that doesn't consider me part of it. You wanted to be their mother again? Congratulations. Here's your chance. David, please. Let me put Emma on. She wants to apologize. For what? For being honest about how she sees me? No, Sarah. You all made your feelings clear. I'm just accepting them. I hung up and turned off my phone again. The next few days were quiet. I went to work, came home, watched television, read books. It felt strange not having anyone to drive anywhere or any activities to attend. No phone calls asking for money or help with problems. No last-minute requests to cover emergencies. It felt lonely, but it also felt peaceful. On Thursday, Emma showed up at my house. She looked terrible, red eyes, pale skin, the kind of exhausted that comes from crying for days. She stood on my porch holding my $1 check, and for a moment, she looked 11 years old again. Can we talk? She asked. I let her in and made coffee while she sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped her with algebra homework for years. I brought your check back, she said finally. I get it. You're angry. I'm not angry, Emma. I'm just tired. Tired of us? I looked at her, really looked at her. She was beautiful and smart and kind, everything I'd hoped she'd become when she was that scared 11-year-old sleeping on my couch. But she was also a stranger, someone who could call me a babysitter and ask for wedding money in the same conversation. Tired of being taken for granted, I said. Tired of being expected to solve problems without being included in decisions. Tired of being the convenient uncle who shows up with his checkbook when needed. That's not how I see you. Isn't it? When's the last time you called me just to talk? When's the last time you asked how I was doing? When's the last time you introduced me to someone as anything other than your helpful uncle? She was quiet for a long time. I never thought about it that way. I know. That's the problem. David, I love you. You know that, right? You've been more of a father to me than anyone else ever was. But it's complicated. Mom's back now, and she's trying, and I want her to succeed. I want to have a relationship with her. And somehow, when I talk about you as my dad, it makes her feel bad. Like she failed. She did fail, Emma. She abandoned her children. That's not something you should have to pretend didn't happen to protect her feelings. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. I know. But she's my mom. And she's fragile right now. Derek's been good for her, but she's still figuring things out. And what about you? What about Jake and Mia? Who's figuring things out for you? I thought you always would. I thought you'd always be there, no matter what. I will always be there for you, Emma. But not as your ATM. Not as the solution to every financial problem. If you want me in your life, it has to be because you value me as a person, not because I'm useful. She cried harder then, and every instinct I had told me to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay, to write her a check for the wedding and pretend this conversation had never happened. Instead, I sat there and let her cry. The thing is, she said finally, I don't know how to have a relationship with you that doesn't involve money. You've always been the one who solved things by paying for them. I don't know what else to offer you. It was the most honest thing she'd said in years. Offer me honesty, I said. Offer me respect. Offer me inclusion in decisions that affect this family. Offer me acknowledgement of what the last 8 years actually were. What were they? They were me being your father. Not your babysitter. Not your helpful uncle. Your father. The man who raised you. And if you can't acknowledge that, then we don't have anything to build on. She left without taking the check. Jake came by the next day. He was angrier than Emma, less willing to acknowledge any wrongdoing. This is stupid, he said, pacing around my living room. You're punishing us because your feelings got hurt. How should I handle it, Jake? What's the appropriate response when your family tells everyone you're just the babysitter? We didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? He stopped pacing and looked at me. I don't know. I guess we never really talked about what you were to us. You were just David. You were just there. Just there. For 8 years. Yeah, but it's not like you're our real dad. The words hung in the air like a slap. Jake realized what he'd said and went pale. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. And that's fine, Jake. You're right. I'm not your real dad. Your real dad took off when you were 5 and never looked back. I'm just the guy who taught you to drive and went to your basketball games and helped you with college applications. Just the guy who bailed you out of jail and talked you through your first breakup and co-signed your car loan. David, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. Yes, you did. And you're entitled to feel that way. But if I'm not your real dad, then I don't have real dad responsibilities. I don't have to pay for your college or your car insurance or your emergencies. I can just be the uncle who shows up for holidays and birthdays with a nice gift. That's not what I want. What do you want, Jake? He thought about it for a long time. I want things to go back to the way they were. With me paying for everything and staying in the background while your mother takes credit for raising you? No. I want you to be my dad, but I also want my mom to be my mom. I want both. You can have both. But you can't have me as your dad while treating me like the hired help. Jake left angry, but he was thinking. I could see it in his face. Mia was the hardest. She came by on Saturday morning, riding her bike, the one I bought her for her 13th birthday. She looked so young, so confused by everything that was happening. David, I don't understand why everyone's fighting, she said. We sat in the backyard, on the swing set I'd built for her. She was too big for it now, but she still liked to sit there when she was upset. Sometimes adults have disagreements about important things, I said. But your family. Family doesn't give up on each other. Out of the mouths of babes. You're right, Mia. Family doesn't give up on each other. But family also doesn't lie to each other or take each other for granted. Did we lie to you? I thought about how to explain it in a way she'd understand. Remember when you were little, and you'd help me make dinner? And then when your mom came home, you'd tell her you made dinner all by yourself? She giggled. Yeah, but I was just pretending. But what if you grew up and really believed you'd made all those dinners by yourself? What if you forgot that I was there helping you? How would that make me feel? Her face got serious. Sad. That's kind of what happened, sweetheart. Your mom came back, and everyone forgot about all the times I helped. They started acting like I was just someone who hung around sometimes. But I didn't forget. I remember everything. I know you do. But you also called me the babysitter at your mom's party. Mia's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to make mom feel bad. She gets sad when people talk about how you took care of us. And what about my feelings? What about making me feel bad? I didn't think about that. I'm sorry. She was only 14. Still young enough to change, to learn, to become the kind of person who thought about other people's feelings. But she was also old enough to understand consequences. I forgive you, Mia. But things can't go back to exactly the way they were. Do you understand? Because you're mad at us? Because I need to protect myself. Just like your mom needs to protect her feelings, I need to protect mine. She cried then, and I held her while she sobbed. She was still my little girl, even if she couldn't call me dad. The breaking point came the following Monday. Sarah showed up at my office, crying and desperate. My secretary tried to stop her, but Sarah pushed past and burst into my office while I was on a conference call. Excuse me, I told my clients, I need to handle a family emergency. I'll call you back. Sarah collapsed into the chair across from my desk. She looked awful, thin, pale, with the kind of frantic energy that comes from panic. David, please. I'm losing my apartment. Derek left. The kids are devastated. Emma dropped out of school because she can't afford tuition. This has gone too far. Derek left? He said he didn't sign up for all this drama. Said I clearly had unresolved issues with my family and he didn't want to be in the middle of it. So Derek's oil money had dried up, the minute things got complicated. What a surprise. I'm sorry to hear that, Sarah. Are you? Because this is what you wanted, isn't it? You wanted to prove that we needed you, and now you've proved it. We need you. We can't make it without you. Are you happy? I looked at my sister, really looked at her. She was 42 years old, beautiful, intelligent, and completely unprepared to handle the responsibilities she'd walked away from 8 years ago. No, Sarah. I'm not happy. I'm heartbroken. Do you want to know why? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Because for 8 years, I thought I was part of this family. I thought those kids were my kids, at least partly. I thought you and I were partners in raising them. I thought when you came back, you'd be grateful. I thought you'd include me. I thought you'd acknowledge what I'd done. I am grateful. You're grateful for my money. You're grateful for my usefulness. But you're not grateful for me. You've never once said, thank you for raising your children. You've never once acknowledged that I gave up my own life to make sure they had a good one. You've never once treated me like anything more than convenient help. That's not true. Isn't it? Name one time, when you've put my needs ahead of yours. One time when you've considered my feelings before making a decision that affected all of us. She was quiet for a long time. When you came back 6 months ago, I continued, you could have said, David, I know you've been their primary parent for 8 years. How do we handle this transition? How do we make sure everyone feels valued? Instead, you just started rewriting history like I'd been the helpful neighbor who occasionally babysat. I didn't know how to handle it. It was awkward. You'd done so much, and I felt guilty. So you decided to minimize what I'd done instead of dealing with your guilt. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. And when I tried to show you how much you'd hurt me, your first instinct wasn't to apologize. It was to tell me I was being vindictive and cruel. Sarah put her head in her hands. What do you want from me, David? What do I have to do to fix this? I want you to tell the truth. To everyone. I want you to acknowledge what really happened over the last 8 years. I want you to stop calling me a babysitter and start calling me what I was, their father when you couldn't be their mother. And then you'll give us the money back? You'll pay for Emma's school and Jake's car insurance and my rent? I sighed. Sarah, it's not about the money. It's about respect. It's about being treated like family instead of like a service provider. But you will help us financially? And there it was. Even now, even in this moment of supposed honesty, she was still thinking about the money first. I'll help my family when they treat me like family, I said. But I'm done being a checkbook with legs. Sarah left angry, muttering about how I was destroying the family over my hurt feelings. But something must have gotten through to her, because that evening, Emma called. David, can I come over? I want to talk. She showed up an hour later with Jake and Mia. The three of them sat on my couch, looking nervous and young. Mom told us what you said, Emma began. About wanting us to tell the truth. And we've been talking. About what really happened, and how we've been acting, and what we owe you. I waited. You raised us, Jake said quietly. You were our dad. And we pretended you weren't because it was easier than dealing with the complicated stuff. It hurt Mom's feelings when people talked about how you took care of us, Mia added. So we just stopped talking about it. But that hurt your feelings instead. We didn't think about your feelings, Emma said. We just assumed you'd always be there no matter how we treated you. That was wrong. I felt something loosen in my chest, some knot of pain I'd been carrying for months. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. We want to do better, Emma continued. We want to treat you like the father you've been to us. But we also don't want to hurt Mom. You can honor both relationships, I said. But you can't pretend one of them didn't happen. We know. We talked to Mom about it. She's going to therapy. She's going to work on dealing with her guilt instead of asking us to pretend you weren't important. And we want to pay you back, Jake said suddenly. For everything. I got a job, and Emma's going to get one too. We can't pay you back all at once, but we can start. I don't want you to pay me back. We want to, Mia interrupted. We want to do something that shows we understand what you did for us. I looked at these 3 kids, young adults, really, who I'd raised from children. They were good people, despite their mistakes. They were worth every sacrifice I'd made. Okay, I said. But we do this my way. Emma, I'll reinstate your college fund, but you're going to get a job and contribute to your own expenses. Jake, I'll put you back on my car insurance, but you're going to pay me back for it monthly. Mia, you get your credit card back, but with a low limit and you're responsible for staying within it. What about Emma's wedding? Mia asked. Emma and I looked at each other. We'll figure something out, she said. Something that works for everyone. And Sarah's rent? Jake asked. Your mother is going to have to figure out her own housing situation. I'll help her look for something she can afford, but I'm not going to support her financially anymore. That's fair, Emma said. We talked for another hour, working out details, re-establishing boundaries, figuring out how to move forward. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. For the first time in months, I felt like I was talking to my kids instead of to strangers who happened to share my DNA. When they left, Emma hugged me at the door. I love you, Dad, she whispered. Dad. Not David. Not Uncle David. Dad. It was a start. Sarah struggled for a while. She had to get a job, had to find a cheaper apartment, had to learn how to manage her own finances. Derek was long gone, and she was on her own for the first time in her adult life. The kids helped her, which I was proud of. They didn't abandon her the way she'd once abandoned them. But they also didn't pretend I didn't exist. They managed to maintain relationships with both of us, which took effort and emotional maturity that impressed me. Emma's wedding was smaller than she'd originally planned, but it was beautiful. She and Trevor saved money for a year, I contributed what I could afford without going overboard, and Sarah helped with what she could manage. Emma looked radiant walking down the aisle, and when the minister asked who gave her away, she looked at both Sarah and me and said, her mother and father do. It was the first time anyone had called me her father in public. I cried like a baby. Jake graduated high school and started college on a partial scholarship. He works part-time to cover his expenses and has turned into a responsible young man who calls me once a week just to check in. He still thinks of me as his dad, but he's also building a relationship with Sarah that doesn't require him to choose sides. Mia is thriving in high school. She's on the debate team and plays volleyball, and she still comes to me when she needs advice about boys or college plans. She's old enough now to understand the complexity of our family situation, and she handles it with a wisdom that amazes me. As for Sarah, we have an uneasy peace. She's working as a receptionist at a dental office and living in a studio apartment she can afford. She's in therapy, working on her issues with responsibility and commitment. We're not close, but we're civil. She's learning to be a mother to her adult children, and I'm learning to be their father without being their everything. The hardest part was learning to accept gratitude instead of taking it for granted. For years, I'd been so focused on giving that I'd forgotten how to receive. When Emma sent me a card on Father's Day thanking me for everything I'd done, when Jake asked for my advice about his major, when Mia brought her boyfriend over to meet me, these moments felt foreign at first. I'd gotten so used to being invisible that being seen felt uncomfortable. But I'm learning. I'm learning that love isn't about martyrdom. It's not about giving until you disappear. It's about being present, being valued, being part of something bigger than yourself. The kids are part of my life now, not my whole life. I'm dating someone, a teacher named Linda who understands complicated family dynamics because she has some of her own. I have hobbies again. I travel. I have friends who aren't connected to homework help or parent-teacher conferences. I'm not their ATM anymore. I'm their father. There's a difference, and it matters. Sometimes people ask me if I regret what I did, the dramatic gesture with the $1 check, the canceled credit cards, the frozen college funds. They think it was cruel, punishing children for their mother's mistakes. But here's what I learned: sometimes people need to lose something to understand its value. Sometimes love requires boundaries. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's bad behavior, even when that someone is family. The kids needed to learn that relationships are reciprocal, that love requires effort from both sides, that taking someone for granted is a choice with consequences. Sarah needed to learn that being a parent means more than just showing up when it's convenient. And I needed to learn that I deserved better than being treated like hired help by people I loved. Was it worth it? 8 years of my life, $500,000, countless hours and sleepless nights and worried days? Yes. Not because of the money, money can be earned again. But because of who those kids became. Because of the adults they grew into. Because of the relationships we have now, built on honesty and mutual respect instead of obligation and guilt. Emma's happily married and finishing her master's degree. Jake's studying engineering and has a girlfriend he's serious about. Mia's looking at colleges and talking about becoming a social worker because she wants to help kids from complicated families. They're good people. They're my kids, in all the ways that matter. And they know it now. They know who raised them, who sacrificed for them, who loved them when love was hard. They know the difference between a babysitter and a father. That knowledge, that recognition, that love freely given instead of grudgingly extracted, that's worth everything I paid for it. Even the dollar I spent on that check. Story 2. Every Christmas, my parents bought my siblings and cousins iPads and designer clothes while I got dollar store gifts because money was tight. I didn't argue. I didn't complain. I just worked silently and saved. This year, I didn't come home. Instead, I treated myself to Christmas morning in a Maldives overwater villa. When my sunrise over the ocean post hit social media, my parents started calling nonstop, asking where I was and why I'd abandoned the family. Look, I need to tell you something that's going to sound completely unhinged. My family thinks I'm a monster right now because I spent Christmas morning watching the sunrise from an overwater villa in the Maldives instead of sitting in their living room pretending to be grateful for another year of dollar store socks and plastic flashlights. Yeah, you heard that right. While my sister Emma unwrapped her third iPad Pro and my cousin Jake got another pair of $500 sneakers, I was supposed to smile and say thank you for a pack of generic batteries and maybe a candy bar if I was lucky. Money's tight this year, Marcus, Mom would always say, patting my shoulder like that explained why everyone else got gifts that cost more than my monthly groceries. But here's the thing nobody knew, I'd been planning this for 3 years. Every dollar store Christmas, every time I watched my siblings tear open packages worth more than my rent while I got handed something that probably cost less than a coffee, I was calculating. Saving. Planning my escape. The water here is so clear I can see fish swimming 20 feet below my deck. The sun rises like liquid gold, and I'm sitting here in a bathrobe that costs more than all my childhood Christmas gifts combined. My phone has been buzzing nonstop since I posted that sunrise photo 8 hours ago. 17 missed calls from Mom. 12 from Dad. Emma sent me 4 increasingly frantic texts asking where I am and why I'm doing this to the family. I'm doing this to the family? That's rich. Let me back up and explain how we got here, because the whole story is so much worse than just unfair gift distribution. It's about 26 years of being treated like the family disappointment while watching everyone else get handed opportunities I had to fight for with my bare hands. Growing up, I was the middle child in a family that seemed to forget middle children existed. Emma, 2 years older, was the golden daughter who could do no wrong. Perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect everything. She got into Stanford on a partial scholarship, and suddenly every conversation in our house revolved around Emma's achievements, Emma's future, Emma's needs. Then there was Tyler, 4 years younger, who became the baby everyone needed to protect and nurture. He struggled in school, so he got tutors. He wanted to play baseball, so Dad spent every weekend at the diamond coaching his team. He needed emotional support, so the whole family tiptoed around his feelings like he was made of glass. And me? I was just there. The one who figured things out on his own. The one who didn't need help, according to everyone else. The one who was supposed to understand why there wasn't money for my college visits but somehow there was always money for Emma's sorority dues or Tyler's travel baseball team. But Christmas was when the inequality became impossible to ignore. It was like watching a magic show where everyone else saw the real trick and I only got the setup. Every December, I'd watch my parents stress about money, heard them arguing in hushed voices about credit card bills and tight budgets. Then Christmas morning would arrive, and suddenly they were Santa Claus for everyone except me. I still remember Christmas when I was 16. Emma got a MacBook for college. Tyler got a gaming console and 3 games. My cousins, who came over every year, got designer clothes and expensive electronics. I unwrapped a pack of mechanical pencils and a notebook. These are really good pencils, Mom said, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. And you love to write. I did love to write. But I loved it enough to buy my own good pens with money from my part-time job at the grocery store. The pencils were the kind you'd grab from a clearance bin, still in plastic packaging that had someone else's price sticker on it. That night, I heard my parents in their bedroom. We should have gotten Marcus something better, Mom whispered. There wasn't money left after Emma's laptop and Tyler's gifts, Dad replied. Marcus understands. He's always been practical. Practical. That was their word for it. Like being ignored was a personality trait I'd chosen instead of something that had been forced on me. Here's what they didn't understand: I wasn't practical by choice. I was practical because I had to be. Because no one was going to hand me anything. Because I learned early that if I wanted something, I'd have to work for it myself. So I worked. Started at 15 with that grocery store job, moved up to assistant manager by 17. Saved every dollar I could while watching my siblings get handed opportunities like birthday presents. When Emma needed money for her spring break trip, suddenly the family budget had room. When Tyler wanted to attend an expensive summer camp, somehow the credit cards weren't maxed out anymore. But when I asked for help with college application fees, I got a lecture about responsibility and earning my own way. I did earn my own way. Worked 3 jobs through college, graduated with a degree in computer science and exactly zero debt because I'd learned to expect nothing from my family except disappointment. Got hired at a tech startup right out of school, then moved to a bigger company, then started freelancing on the side. By 25, I was making more money than my parents had ever imagined was possible. And you know what they said when I told them about my success? "That's nice, honey. Emma just got promoted to senior associate at her law firm." The final straw came last Christmas. I was 25, financially independent, living in my own apartment, paying my own bills. I'd driven 4 hours to come home for the holidays, took time off work, brought gifts for everyone. Expensive gifts, because I could finally afford to be generous. Christmas morning arrived, and the pattern continued like clockwork. Emma unwrapped a designer purse that cost $800. Tyler got a new gaming setup that probably ran close to $1,000. My cousins got tablets and clothes and jewelry. I got a pack of tube socks and a plastic water bottle. I sat there holding that water bottle, watching everyone else tear through wrapping paper and exclaim over their gifts, and something inside me just broke. Not in a dramatic way. More like a circuit breaker flipping off to prevent a fire. "Thanks, Mom," I said, exactly like I'd said every year before. "It's a really good water bottle," she replied, exactly like she'd said about every other disappointing gift. "Dishwasher safe." That's when I made the decision. Sitting there in my childhood living room, holding a $3 water bottle while my siblings compared their expensive electronics, I decided this would be the last Christmas I spent pretending everything was normal. I didn't announce it. Didn't make a scene. Just smiled and participated in the family traditions like I always had. Helped with dinner, played games with my cousins, listened to Emma talk about her job and Tyler discuss his plans for graduate school. But inside, I was already gone. The next day, I drove back to my apartment and started planning. Not a revenge plot or anything dramatic. Just a simple decision to spend the next Christmas exactly how I wanted to spend it, without regard for anyone else's expectations. I'd always wanted to travel. Always dreamed of seeing the world beyond the small town where I grew up. But family obligations and guilt had kept me tied to the same patterns year after year. Not anymore. I researched destinations for months. Looked at every luxury resort, every exotic location, every experience I'd ever imagined but never thought I could afford. Turns out, when you've been saving money for years because your family trained you to expect nothing, you can afford quite a lot. The Maldives chose itself. Overwater villas, crystal clear lagoons, complete isolation from everything familiar. I booked the most expensive package I could find, 7 nights in a resort that cost more per night than most people make in a month. Private chef, personal butler, unlimited spa treatments. Everything my practical, responsible, always understanding personality had been trained to reject. I didn't tell anyone about the trip. When my family started making Christmas plans in November, I just said I might not be able to make it home this year. Work was busy, travel was expensive, maybe next year. "But it's Christmas," Mom said during one of our weekly phone calls. "You have to come home for Christmas." "I'll try," I told her. Which wasn't technically a lie. I was trying to do something different. December 23rd, I flew to Dubai, then transferred to a seaplane that took me directly to the resort. The moment I stepped onto that dock and saw my villa stretching out over the water, I knew I'd made the right choice. The staff treated me like I was the most important person in the world. The villa was bigger than my apartment, with a glass floor in the living room so I could watch fish swimming beneath my feet. The bedroom opened directly onto a deck that hung over the lagoon, with stairs leading down into water so warm it felt like a bath. Christmas Eve, I had dinner on my private deck while watching dolphins play in the distance. The chef had prepared a meal that probably cost more than my family spent on their entire Christmas dinner. I ate slowly, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors I'd never seen before, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete peace. No one asking me to help with dishes. No one expecting me to be grateful for scraps while everyone else feasted. No one treating my presence like an obligation they had to tolerate rather than a gift they wanted to receive. I slept better that night than I had in months. Christmas morning arrived with the kind of sunrise that makes you understand why people believe in magic. I woke up naturally, no alarm, and walked onto my deck to watch the sky change from deep purple to pink to gold. The water was mirror still, reflecting the clouds like a painting. That's when I took the photo. Just me in a bathrobe, coffee cup in hand, sitting on the edge of my deck with my feet dangling in the warm water. The sun was a perfect golden ball rising from the horizon, and everything felt possible. I posted it to social media with a simple caption, "Christmas morning in paradise. Grateful for new traditions." Then I put my phone on silent and went to breakfast. The resort had prepared a special Christmas brunch on the beach. I sat at a table for one, feet in the sand, eating fresh fruit and pastries while watching other guests enjoy their own private celebrations. Couples taking photos, families building sandcastles, everyone relaxed and genuinely happy. It wasn't until late afternoon that I checked my phone and discovered the chaos I'd unleashed. 17 missed calls from Mom. 12 from Dad. Texts from Emma, Tyler, both sets of grandparents, 3 aunts, 2 uncles, and 4 cousins. The messages started confused and quickly escalated to frantic. Mom, 9:23 a.m., where are you? We're waiting to open presents. Mom, 9:45 a.m., Marcus, please call. We're worried. Mom, 10:17 a.m., I saw your post. Are you in the Maldives? Why didn't you tell us? Emma, 10:22 a.m., what the heck is wrong with you? Mom is crying. Dad, 10:30 a.m., son, call home immediately. This isn't like you. Tyler, 11:15 a.m., dude, seriously? On Christmas? And on and on. Each message more dramatic than the last, like I'd committed some unforgivable sin by choosing to spend my own money on my own vacation instead of sitting in their living room accepting their petty gifts. The call started around noon my time. I let them go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me and I listened to a few. Marcus, honey, please call us back. We don't understand what's happening. Are you okay? Are you safe? We're all here waiting for you and you just disappeared. This isn't like you, sweetheart. Please just call and tell us you're okay. Mom's voice was shaky, like she was genuinely scared. For a moment, I felt guilty. Then I remembered the pack of tube socks and the feeling passed. Dad's voicemail was different. Marcus, I don't know what kind of statement you're trying to make here, but this is not the way to handle family issues. We need to talk about this like adults. Call me back. Emma left 3 voicemails, each angrier than the last. Marcus, what is your problem? Mom has been crying all morning because she thinks something happened to you, and then we see her living it up in some resort? Do you have any idea how selfish this is? It's Christmas, for crying out loud. Family comes first. Family comes first. That's what she said. Family comes first, unless you're the family member who doesn't count. I put the phone away and went for a swim in the lagoon. The water was perfectly clear, warm as a bathtub, with tropical fish swimming around my feet like living jewelry. I floated on my back and stared up at the cloudless sky, feeling the tension drain from my shoulders. This was what Christmas was supposed to feel like. Peaceful. Joyful. A celebration of good things, not an obligation to endure. That evening, I had dinner at the resort's underwater restaurant. Sitting 20 feet below the surface, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows showing the reef at night, watching sharks and rays glide past like ghosts. The food was incredible, but what struck me most was the silence. No forced conversation, no careful navigation around sensitive topics, no pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. Just me, enjoying an experience I'd earned with my own hard work, beholden to no one. I finally called my parents back on December 26th. By then, I'd had time to think about what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. Marcus. Mom answered on the first ring. Oh, thank goodness, we've been so worried. Where are you? Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. I'm in the Maldives. I told you I might not make it home this Christmas. But you didn't tell us you were leaving the country. We thought. We didn't know what to think. Are you safe? Are you alone? I'm safe. I'm having a wonderful time. This is the best Christmas I've had in years. Silence. Then, but why didn't you tell us? We were all here waiting for you. We saved your gifts. What gifts? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Your Christmas gifts. We always get you gifts. I almost laughed. Like the tube socks last year? Another silence, longer this time. Marcus, I don't understand what this is about. Mom, can I ask you something? How much did you spend on Emma's Christmas gifts last year? That's not really. Why are you asking that? Just curious. Rough estimate. Marcus, I don't think this is an appropriate conversation. 800? 1,000? More? Money isn't everything, honey. You're right. It's not. But respect is. And being treated like you matter is. And feeling like you're actually part of the family instead of just some obligation everyone tolerates. I could hear her crying now. Marcus, you are part of this family. You're our son. We love you. I love you too, Mom. But loving someone and treating them well are two different things. Dad got on the phone then. Marcus, what's this really about? If you're upset about something, we can talk about it like adults. But running away to some resort and worrying your mother sick isn't the answer. I didn't run away, Dad. I took a vacation. Adults do that. On Christmas? Without telling anyone? I told you I might not make it home. That's not the same thing and you know it. He was right, and I did know it. But I also knew something else. Sometimes you have to break the pattern completely before people will pay attention to it. Dad, let me ask you something. Do you remember what you got me for Christmas when I was 16? That was 10 years ago, son. I can't remember every specific gift. Mechanical pencils. From the dollar store. Still had the original price tag on them. Okay, and? Emma got a MacBook that year. $800. Emma needed a computer for college. I needed a computer too. I was a junior in high school, planning to study computer science. I mentioned it probably 50 times that fall. Marcus, we couldn't afford to buy everyone expensive gifts. But you could afford to buy some people expensive gifts. Silence. You want to know what I bought my computer with? Money from working 30 hours a week at the grocery store while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. You want to know how I paid for college? 3 jobs and scholarships I earned myself. You want to know how I can afford a trip to the Maldives? Because I learned early that no one was going to hand me anything, so I worked twice as hard as everyone else. Marcus, we're proud of your success. No, you're not. You're confused by it. When I told you about my promotion last year, you changed the subject to Emma's law firm. When I bought my apartment, you asked if I was sure I could afford the payments. When I started my consulting business, you warned me about the risks of leaving a stable job. My voice was getting louder, more emotional than I'd intended. The zen of the past few days was cracking, and years of suppressed frustration were bleeding through. You trained me to expect nothing from this family, and then you act surprised when I find my happiness somewhere else. That's not fair, Dad said, but his voice had lost its edge. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been getting Christmas gifts that didn't come from the clearance bin. Fair would have been getting help with college like Emma and Tyler did. Fair would have been having my achievements celebrated instead of minimized. Fair would have been being treated like I mattered. I was crying now, which surprised me. I thought I'd worked through all this anger years ago. Fair would have been feeling like I was wanted at family gatherings instead of tolerated. Mom got back on the phone. Marcus, honey, you are wanted. We want you here. We've always wanted you here. No, Mom. You wanted me to be there. You wanted me to fill my role in the family picture. But you never wanted me to be me. You wanted me to be the practical one, the understanding one, the one who doesn't need anything because that made everyone else's life easier. That's not true. Isn't it? When's the last time you asked me what I wanted for Christmas instead of just assuming I'd be grateful for whatever you picked up at the last minute? Silence. When's the last time you asked about my job beyond whether I was making enough money to pay my bills? More silence. When's the last time you called me just to check in, not because you needed something or because you felt obligated? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. I don't know, Mom finally whispered. And there it was. The truth we'd all been dancing around for years. They didn't really know me, because they'd never bothered to try. They loved the idea of me, the role I played in their family structure, but they didn't know or particularly care about the actual person I'd become. I'm going to finish my vacation, I told them. I'm going to enjoy the paradise I worked hard enough to afford. And when I get home, I'm going to keep living my life the way I want to live it. You're welcome to be part of that life, but only if you can figure out how to treat me like I matter. Marcus, Dad started. I love you both. I love Emma and Tyler. But I'm done pretending that love is enough when it's not backed up by respect or effort or basic consideration. I hung up before they could respond. The next 3 days passed like a dream. I snorkeled through coral gardens that looked like alien landscapes. I had massages on the beach while listening to waves lap against the shore. I read books without interruption. I ate amazing food and watched incredible sunsets and felt my shoulders relax in ways they hadn't in years. Most importantly, I felt free. Free from expectations that made no sense. Free from traditions that served everyone except me. Free from the exhausting work of pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. On my last night, I sat on my deck watching stars reflect in the water and realized something important. This wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about finally putting myself first. About choosing my own happiness instead of sacrificing it for other people's comfort. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. I've been thinking about what you said. Can we talk when you get home? Then one from Tyler. Mom told me about your conversation. I never realized. I'm sorry. And finally, one from Mom. Your father and I have been talking. You're right about some things. We'd like to try to do better. Love you. I stared at those messages for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore them, to protect the peace I'd found by cutting ties completely. But a bigger part of me recognized something I hadn't seen before: genuine acknowledgement. Not apologies followed by excuses. Not promises to try harder followed by justifications for past behavior. Just simple recognition that I'd been treated unfairly and a request to try again. Maybe that was enough to build on. Maybe not. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had a choice in the matter instead of just an obligation to endure. I flew home 2 days later, tanned and relaxed and fundamentally changed. Not bitter, exactly, but clear about my boundaries in a way I'd never been before. Clear about what I would and wouldn't accept from the people who claimed to love me. Emma called the day after I got back. "Can I take you to dinner?" My treat. We met at a restaurant I'd mentioned months ago but she'd probably forgotten about until now. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her napkin and avoiding eye contact. "I owe you an apology," she said without preamble. "A big one." "Okay. I never paid attention to how you were treated at Christmas. I was too focused on my own gifts to notice that yours were different." Different is a nice way to put it. Worse. They were worse. Significantly worse. She met my eyes for the first time. "I asked Mom about it after your call. Did you know they spent less than $20 on your gifts last year combined?" I did some quick math in my head. "Yeah, that sounds right. Marcus, I spent more than that on coffee that week. My purse cost 40 times what they spent on you." "I know. How long has this been going on?" "Always. As long as I can remember." She was quiet for a long time, processing. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "I did. Not directly, maybe, but I tried. Remember when I was 17 and asked if we could set a budget for Christmas gifts so everyone got the same amount spent on them?" "Vaguely." "Mom said that would take the thoughtfulness out of gift giving. That it wasn't about money, it was about finding the perfect thing for each person." I took a sip of water. Apparently the perfect thing for me was always whatever was left over after everyone else got taken care of. That's horrible. It was what it was. I adapted. You shouldn't have had to adapt. You should have been treated equally. That hit harder than I'd expected. Not because it was news, but because it was the first time anyone in my family had said it out loud. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For seeing it. For acknowledging it. For not making excuses or telling me I'm being too sensitive." Emma reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry I never saw it before. I'm sorry I was part of the problem." "You weren't part of the problem. You were just a kid getting gifts from your parents. You didn't control their choices. But I could have shared. I could have noticed. I could have said something. Maybe. But you were dealing with your own stuff. We all were." We talked for 3 hours. Really talked, maybe for the first time as adults. She told me about the pressure she'd felt to be perfect, how every gift came with unspoken expectations about maintaining her golden child status. I told her about the loneliness of being the forgotten middle child, how I'd learned to find validation through achievement because it was the only currency the family seemed to recognize. Tyler called the next week. That conversation was shorter but equally honest. He'd been too young to understand the dynamics when we were kids, but looking back with adult eyes, he could see the patterns clear as day. "I got way too much attention," he admitted. "Good and bad. You got ignored. Pretty much. That must have sucked." It did. But it also made me independent. There are worse things than learning to rely on yourself. Still, you deserved better. Again with that word, deserved. Such a simple concept, but one I'd never applied to my own family relationships. My parents took longer to come around. Dad called a few weeks after I got home, awkward and stilted at first, but genuine in his attempt to understand what had gone wrong. Mom took even longer, struggling with guilt and defensiveness in equal measure. But slowly, carefully, we started to rebuild. Not the old relationship where I accepted scraps and smiled about it, but something new. Something more honest. This year, they asked me in October what I wanted for Christmas. Not in a token way, but seriously. Like my answer mattered. I told them I didn't want anything expensive. Just something that showed they'd thought about me specifically, not just grab something generic at the last minute. "Like what?" Mom asked. "I don't know. Something that shows you know who I am. A book by an author I've mentioned. Coffee from that place I told you about. A plant for my apartment. It doesn't matter what it costs. It matters that it's for me. Christmas is next week. I don't know what they'll choose or whether they'll follow through. But for the first time in years, I'm looking forward to finding out instead of dreading the inevitable disappointment. And if they fall back into old patterns? I have backup plans. The Maldives was incredible, but there are so many other places to see. Thailand, Japan, New Zealand. The world is full of beautiful destinations where I can spend the holidays exactly how I want to spend them. Because here's what I learned sitting on that deck watching the sun rise over the Indian Ocean. You can't control how other people treat you, but you can absolutely control how much of it you're willing to accept. You can't force people to value you, but you can stop devaluing yourself to make their neglect easier to bear. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to enable their worst habits. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do for yourself is demand better treatment, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. Sometimes you have to be willing to spend Christmas morning alone in paradise before people realize you were never asking for much. You were just asking to matter. The sun is setting now outside my apartment window. Not as spectacular as the Maldives sunrise, but beautiful in its own way. My phone is buzzing with texts from my family, making plans for Christmas week. Real plans this time, not just assumptions about my availability. Emma wants to cook dinner together. Tyler suggested we all go ice skating like we used to when we were kids. Mom asked if I'd help her pick out gifts for Dad because she values my opinion. Small changes, maybe. But they feel enormous after years of being an afterthought. I don't know if this new dynamic will last. Family patterns run deep, and change is hard work that requires constant attention. But I know something I didn't know before: I deserve effort. I deserve consideration. I deserve to be treated like I matter. The real test came sooner than I expected. 3 weeks after my conversation with Emma, my cousin Jake called. You remember Jake, the one who got $500 sneakers every Christmas while I unwrapped generic batteries. He'd just graduated college and landed his first job at a marketing firm in the city. Hey man, I'm moving to your area next month, he said, all casual friendliness like we'd been close our whole lives. I was wondering if I could crash at your place for a few weeks while I find an apartment? Just until I get settled. There it was. The old pattern asserting itself with surgical precision. Jake needed something, so naturally, practical Marcus would provide it. No discussion of rent, no timeline for moving out, no consideration that I might have my own life and preferences about house guests. I don't think that's going to work, I said. Silence. Then, what do you mean? I mean I'm not comfortable having a house guest right now. My apartment isn't really set up for it. Dude, it's just temporary. A couple weeks, maybe a month. I won't be in your way. Jake, I work from home. I need my space and my routine. But I'd be happy to help you look for places online, or give you recommendations for good neighborhoods. More silence. I could practically hear him recalibrating, trying to figure out why his automatic assumption of my availability had hit a wall. I mean, we're family, he said finally, like that explained everything. Yes, we are. And I want you to succeed in your new job and your new city. That's why I'm offering to help in ways that work for both of us. But I can't afford a hotel for weeks. I was counting on staying with you. You were counting on it without asking me first. I just assumed. I know. Everyone always assumes with me. That's part of what I'm trying to change. The call ended awkwardly, with Jake promising to figure something out in a tone that suggested I'd personally ruined his life. Within an hour, my phone was ringing. Marcus? Mom's voice had that careful, diplomatic quality she used when she was about to ask me to sacrifice something for family harmony. Jake called. He said you won't let him stay with you? That's not exactly how I'd phrase it, but sure. Honey, he's just starting out. He doesn't have much money, and he's family. Couldn't you help him out? And there it was. The exact conversation I'd been having my entire life, just with different details. Marcus should sacrifice his comfort, his space, his preferences, because someone else needed something and he was the reliable one who always said yes. Mom, I offered to help him in other ways. I'm not comfortable having a house guest right now. But why? You have that nice apartment, and he's such a good kid. Because I live alone by choice. Because I work from home and need quiet. Because I don't want to be responsible for someone else's housing situation. Because I said no, and that should be enough. Marcus, this doesn't sound like you. There it was again. The old Marcus, the one who never caused problems or made waves or prioritized his own needs. The one who had apparently been so easy to take advantage of that saying no seemed like a personality disorder. Maybe the old me would have said yes, I admitted. But the old me also spent Christmas mornings pretending to be grateful for dollar store gifts while everyone else got treated like they mattered. I'm trying to be different now. This isn't about Christmas gifts, honey. This is about helping family. No, Mom. This is about exactly the same thing. This is about the assumption that my life, my space, my comfort should always be available for other people's convenience. It's about treating me like I don't have the right to make decisions about my own home. I could hear her breathing, thinking. What if it was just for 1 week? Mom, the length of time isn't the issue. What if he paid rent? The money isn't the issue either. Then what is the issue? The issue is that Jake called me and told me he was moving in, instead of asking if I'd be willing to help. The issue is that when I said no, he immediately called you to pressure me into changing my mind. The issue is that everyone in this family thinks my boundaries are suggestions instead of actual limits. Another long pause. I just thought you'd want to help. I do want to help. I offered to help. But helping doesn't mean saying yes to everything, and wanting to help doesn't mean I'm obligated to sacrifice my own comfort. Okay, she said finally. I'll tell Jake he needs to make other arrangements. Thank you. But I could hear it in her voice, the disappointment, the confusion about why I was being so difficult. Like basic self-respect was some kind of character flaw. Jake figured it out eventually. Found a shared apartment with 2 other recent grads and seemed perfectly fine with the arrangement. But the whole situation confirmed what I'd suspected. Changing the Christmas gift dynamic was just the beginning. The real work was going to be setting boundaries in every aspect of our family relationships. Emma actually surprised me by being supportive when I told her about the Jake situation. Good for you, she said over coffee the next weekend. He totally assumed you'd just say yes. Everyone assumes I'll just say yes. That's been my role in this family since I was old enough to tie my own shoes. You know, I've been thinking about what you said about Christmas, and I realized it's not just about the gifts. What do you mean? I mean, you've been the family's designated helper for everything. When someone needs a ride to the airport, they call Marcus. When someone needs help moving, they call Marcus. When someone needs a loan or a favor or just someone to listen to their problems, they call Marcus. She was right. I've been the family's unofficial support system for years, always available, always reliable, never asking for anything in return. But when was the last time anyone offered to help you? Emma continued. When you bought your apartment, did anyone offer to help you move? I thought about it. No. I hired movers. When you started your consulting business, did anyone offer to help with marketing or networking or anything? No. I figured it out myself. When you were working 3 jobs in college, did anyone offer to help with anything? Money, food, rides, anything? No. I was starting to see her point. But I never asked. Because you learned not to ask. Because asking meant disappointment, so you just handled everything yourself. That hit deep. She was absolutely right. I'd become so accustomed to being the family's resource that I'd forgotten I was allowed to have needs of my own. It's like you've been everyone's backup plan, Emma said. The person they could count on when their first choice fell through. Ouch. Sorry, but it's true. And the weird thing is, I don't think anyone even realized they were doing it. It's just become so automatic to expect Marcus to be available that nobody thought about whether it was fair. So what do I do about it? Keep doing what you're doing. Keep saying no when you want to say no. Keep setting boundaries. Eventually, everyone will adjust. And if they don't? Emma smiled. Then you take more trips to tropical islands until they figure it out. The holidays were definitely going to be interesting this year. For the first time in my adult life, I was going into Christmas season with actual expectations instead of resigned acceptance. Not expectations for expensive gifts, I was long past caring about that, but expectations for basic respect and consideration. Mom called in early December to discuss plans. We were thinking Christmas Eve at our house like always, then Christmas morning there too. Does that work for you? The old Marcus would have automatically said yes, regardless of his own preferences. The new Marcus paused to think about what he actually wanted. I'd like to come Christmas Eve, I said. But I think I'd prefer to spend Christmas morning at my own place this year. Your own place? But we always do Christmas morning together. I know. But I've been thinking I'd like to start some new traditions. Maybe come over in the afternoon instead? But the presents. We always open presents together Christmas morning. We could open them Christmas Eve. Or I could open mine at home and bring everyone else's gifts when I come over. I could hear her struggling with this deviation from tradition. Our family was big on tradition, even when the tradition served some people better than others. It just won't feel like Christmas without everyone here in the morning, she said. It will feel different, I agreed. But different doesn't necessarily mean worse. I just don't understand why you want to be alone on Christmas morning. I don't necessarily want to be alone. I want to have a choice. I want Christmas morning to be something I enjoy instead of something I endure. That probably came out harsher than I intended, but it was honest. Endure? Her voice got small. Have you been enduring Christmas? Parts of it, yeah. For a long time. Marcus. She was crying now. I had no idea you felt that way. I know you didn't. That's part of the problem. But we can fix it if we're all willing to try. What would make you enjoy Christmas morning? The question caught me off guard. Nobody had ever asked me that before. I don't know, I admitted. I've never really thought about it. I've just been showing up and playing my part. Well, think about it. And let's talk about how to make this work for everyone. That conversation happened 3 weeks ago. Since then, we've had several more discussions about Christmas plans, and for the first time in my life, my preferences have been part of the equation. Not just accommodated as an afterthought, but actually considered from the beginning. They decided to move present opening to Christmas Eve so I could still be part of it while having my Christmas morning to myself. Tyler suggested we do a family breakfast on the 26th instead, something we'd never done before. Emma offered to cook, which was also new. Small changes, but they felt revolutionary. Yesterday, Mom called with an update on gifts. "I got you something I think you'll really like," she said. "It's not expensive, but I thought about you specifically when I saw it. That's all I wanted." "And Marcus? I'm sorry it took me so long to pay attention. I'm sorry you had to go to the Maldives for us to notice you were unhappy." "I'm not sorry I went to the Maldives," I said. "It was exactly what I needed." "I know. I'm glad you did something good for yourself. You deserve good things." There's that word again. Deserve. It's funny how radical that concept can feel when you've spent years being told, directly or indirectly, that you should be grateful for whatever scraps fall your way. I've been thinking a lot about what I learned during those 6 days in paradise. Not just about my family, but about myself. About the difference between being accommodating and being a doormat. About the difference between being generous and being taken advantage of. About the difference between loving people and enabling their worst behaviors. The Maldives taught me that I'm capable of making decisions purely for my own happiness. That I can prioritize my own needs without the sky falling. That choosing myself doesn't make me selfish, it makes me self-aware. But more than that, it taught me that I'm worth the effort. Worth the expensive trip, worth the luxury experience, worth the time and attention I've been giving everyone else but never myself. And apparently, it taught my family that I'm worth the effort too. Worth listening to, worth considering, worth treating like my feelings matter. Christmas is next week. I still don't know exactly what they'll choose or whether these changes will stick long term. Family patterns run deep, and change is hard work that requires constant attention. But for the first time in years, I'm looking forward to the holidays instead of dreading them. I'm curious about my gifts instead of resigned to disappointment. I'm excited to see my family instead of feeling obligated to show up. And if things go badly? If they fall back into old patterns and forget everything we've talked about? Well, I've been researching flights to New Zealand. I hear the beaches there are incredible this time of year. The difference is, now I know that's a choice I'm allowed to make. I know I'm worth more than whatever leftovers are available after everyone else gets taken care of. I know that love without respect isn't enough, and that I don't have to accept less than I deserve just to keep the peace. Sometimes you have to be willing to spend Christmas morning alone in paradise before people realize they never actually wanted you to be alone. They just wanted you to be convenient. I'm done being convenient. I'm ready to be valued instead. And if that's too much to ask from the people who claim to love me most? Well, the world is full of beautiful places where I can spend the holidays exactly how I want to spend them, surrounded by the peace and respect I've learned to give myself. But I'm hoping, really hoping, that this year will be different. That this Christmas morning will be the first of many where I feel like I belong instead of just fit in. We'll see. Either way, I'll be exactly where I choose to be, doing exactly what makes me happy. And that, more than any gift under any tree, feels like the best present I could give myself. Story 3.
My neighbor called me at 3:07 a.m. "Why is your husband peeking into my 12-year-old daughter's bedroom window?" 6 years ago, I married David Chen, and I thought I'd won some kind of cosmic lottery. He's a pediatric nurse, the kind who remembers kids' names months after they've been discharged, who keeps stickers in his scrubs for the scared ones. He works 3 night shifts a week at County General, comes home smelling like hospital antiseptic and exhaustion, and somehow still asks about my day. We moved to Maplewood Estates 7 months ago. Quiet street, decent neighbors, the kind of place where people actually wave when you check the mail. Our house is a pale blue colonial with white shutters that I repainted myself last spring. Next door are the Castellanos, Marco, his wife Teresa, and their 12-year-old daughter Sophia. Sophia's this quiet, artistic kid who reminds me of myself at that age. Big eyes, always carrying a sketchbook. I'm a high school art teacher, and when Teresa mentioned Sophia was struggling with perspective drawing, I offered to tutor her once a week. No charge. Just being neighborly. David thought it was sweet. "You're good with kids," he said. "You'll make a great mom someday." Someday. That word has teeth. We've been trying for 2 years. 2 years of negative tests, of my body betraying me month after month, of conversations that start with "maybe we should see a specialist" and end with silence. David says he's fine with just us, but I see the way he looks at the kids at work. The longing there. 3 months ago, we started sleeping in separate bedrooms. His idea, technically. The night shifts mess with his sleep schedule, he said. He didn't want to wake me when he came home at dawn or when he got up to walk off his insomnia. Made sense. Practical. But marriages don't die in earthquakes. They die in practical decisions. I should have noticed the other changes. How he started taking his phone everywhere, bathroom, garage, even just to grab something from the car. How he changed all his passwords. How he'd spend 2 hours in the garage on his nights off, claiming he was organizing tools when I could hear him just sitting there. Work stress, he said when I asked. There was an incident. I don't want to talk about it. I didn't push. That's what good wives do, right? Give space. Trust. God, I was stupid. The call came on a Tuesday. I remember because I'd stayed up late grading self-portraits, and my eyes burned from staring at teenage interpretations of identity. I'd finally fallen asleep around midnight, face down on the couch with charcoal smudges on my fingers. My phone shrieked at 3:07 a.m., Teresa Castellano's name lit up the screen, and my stomach dropped before I even answered. Nobody calls at 3:07 a.m. with good news. Emma? Her voice was shaking. No, shaking isn't the right word. Fracturing. Emma, why is your husband looking into my daughter's bedroom window? The words didn't make sense. They were English, but they assembled wrong, like a sentence translated badly from another language. What? I heard something outside. I looked out and there's a man in a dark hoodie pressed against Sophia's window. I turned on the porch light and, her breath hitched. It's David. I saw his face before he ran toward your house. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. Emma, answer me. Why is he? I hung up. I don't remember deciding to. My body just did it, like touching something hot. The house was silent except for the refrigerator's hum. That sound had always been comforting, proof of normalcy, of electricity flowing and food staying cold and life continuing. Now it felt like a flat line. I ran to the garage. David's car was there. Silver Honda, slightly dusty, parked in its usual spot. I touched the hood, cold. His navy hoodie hung on its hook by the door. I grabbed it. The fabric was damp. Not soaked, but definitely damp. Like it had been outside. Like it had been in the night air. My phone was still in my hand. I called David's cell with fingers that didn't feel like mine. From somewhere in the house, I heard his ringtone. Claire de Lune. He'd said it years ago because I said Debussy reminded me of peace. The sound was coming from the kitchen counter. Which meant David was home. Without his phone. Without his car keys. Which meant I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow. Deliberate. Moving from what used to be our bedroom toward the stairs. Every horror movie I'd ever seen told me to run. Every survival instinct screamed. But I just stood there in the garage doorway, hoodie clutched in my fists, watching the staircase. David appeared at the top. He was wearing his scrubs, the light blue ones with the tiny cartoon stethoscopes. His hair stuck up on one side. His eyes were squinted against the light I turned on, confused and half asleep. Em? What's wrong? He looked so normal. So David. For one desperate second, I thought maybe Teresa had been mistaken, maybe it was someone else, maybe. Where were you? My voice came out strangled. What? He started down the stairs, and I stepped back. He noticed. His face changed. I just got home. Through the side door. I didn't want to wake you coming through the garage. What time did you get home? Like 10 minutes ago? Emma, what's going on? 10 minutes ago was 2:57. Teresa's call came at 3:07. She saw someone at Sophia's window 5 minutes ago. Mrs. Castellano called, I said. Someone was looking into Sophia's window. She said it was you. David's face went through several expressions: confusion, shock, horror, too fast for me to track. What? That's insane. I was at work until 20 minutes ago. I drove straight home. Your car's cold. What? Your car hood. It's cold. And your hoodie is wet. He stared at me. Really stared, like I was a stranger. Are you serious right now? You think he couldn't even finish the sentence. Emma, I would never. Where's your phone? You left it on the counter. His hand went automatically to his pocket, found nothing. I forgot it this morning. I've been at work without it all night. You forgot your phone? Yes. I realized halfway through my shift, but I couldn't come back for it. Emma, what is happening? Blue and red lights strobed through the front windows. The police were here. They separated us immediately. 2 officers took David outside while a female detective sat with me in the living room. Detective Lisa Huang, mid-40s, with kind eyes that I instinctively distrusted. Kind eyes ask the worst questions. Walk me through your husband's schedule, she said. I did. The night shifts, the insomnia, the walks. Walks? Her pen paused. Where does he walk? Around the neighborhood. He says it helps clear his head. At what time? Late. 2, 3 in the morning sometimes. She wrote something down. My skin went cold. How's his relationship with the Castellano family? Fine. Normal? I tutor Sophia in art. David barely knows them. Has he ever mentioned Sophia? And there it was. The question with a trap inside it. Once, I said slowly. He said she was artistic like me. Detective Huang's expression didn't change, but I saw it, the tiny shift, the mental note being filed under concerning. Mrs. Chen, has your husband displayed any unusual behavior recently? Mood changes? Secretiveness? Yes. God, yes. But saying it out loud felt like betrayal. Like confirming something I didn't believe. Didn't want to believe. He's been stressed from work, I said. Can you elaborate? There was an incident. He won't talk about it. Says it's patient confidentiality. More notes. More tiny shifts. They kept David for 2 hours. 2 hours of me sitting on my couch, watching the sun come up, wondering if I should call a lawyer or if calling a lawyer made him look guilty or if he was guilty or if I was losing my mind. When they finally let him leave, he didn't come inside right away. I watched through the window as he stood in the driveway, just stood there, looking at our house like he was seeing it for the first time. Or the last time. By 8 a.m., 3 neighbors had texted me. Vague messages. Hope everything's okay. Saw the police cars, let me know if you need anything. The kind of messages that pretend to be supportive but really mean tell me what happened. I didn't respond. By noon, Marco Castellano had left a voicemail that made my hands shake. His voice was low and dangerous, nothing like the friendly guy who'd helped David install our mailbox in August. Keep your husband away from my daughter. I mean it, Emma. If I see him anywhere near my property, we're going to have a problem. And tell him I know who he is. I remember. Remember what? David spent the whole day in bed. Not sleeping, I checked, just staring at the ceiling. When I brought him toast at lunch, he didn't even look at it. They're going to fire me, he said to the ceiling. Administrative leave pending investigation. That's what they said. Pending investigation. Of what? You didn't do anything. Doesn't matter. People hear child and inappropriate in the same sentence, and that's it. Career over. I sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped, and he still didn't look at me. Did you do it? I asked. Finally, his eyes found mine. They were red-rimmed and hollow. No. One word. But I didn't know if I believed it. I started investigating my husband like he was a stranger. I checked his laptop first, password protected. It used to be our anniversary. I tried it. Wrong password. When had he changed it? I went through his dresser drawers. Nothing unusual. Scrubs, socks, the watch I'd bought him for our 5th anniversary. His phone was harder. He kept it on him constantly now, even sleeping with it under his pillow. But he had to shower eventually. When the water started running, I grabbed it from the nightstand. Face ID didn't work, I knew it wouldn't. He'd removed me months ago, said it was for hospital security. I tried his old passcodes. None worked. I had 10 minutes, maybe less. I logged into our phone account online. The record showed dozens of deleted texts from an unknown number. All from the past 3 months. All between 1 and 4 a.m. I tried to retrieve them, you can do that sometimes, through the carrier, but they'd been permanently deleted. Someone knew how to cover their tracks. That night, David went for one of his walks. I need to move, he said. I can't just lie here. Maybe you shouldn't. I'm not a prisoner, Emma. He left at 2:30 a.m. I waited 15 minutes, then followed him. He walked 3 blocks, hands jammed in that same navy hoodie, head down. Then he stopped. Right in front of the Castellano house. He just stood there on the sidewalk, staring up at the second floor. At Sophia's window. 7 minutes. I timed it. He didn't move, didn't do anything, just looked. Then he turned and walked home. I barely made it back before him, heart hammering so hard I thought he'd hear it from outside. When he came in, he went straight to bed without a word. I lay awake until dawn, counting my breaths, trying to remember who I'd married. But there was something else. For the past 3 nights, I'd noticed a white sedan parked on our street. Not right in front of our house, but close enough. It was always there after midnight, always gone by morning. Someone was watching. But who? And why? The confrontation happened on Saturday. I'd barely slept all week. My eyes felt gritty, my thoughts scattered. I was grading essays at the kitchen table when David came down, and something in me just snapped. I followed you, I said. No preamble. Tuesday night. I saw you standing outside their house. He froze halfway to the coffee maker. Emma, 7 minutes, David. You stood there for 7 minutes, staring at a 12-year-old's bedroom window. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Because I've been thinking a lot of things this week, and none of them are good. He pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. For a long moment, he just held his head in his hands. When he finally looked up, his eyes were wet. I've been seeing someone, he said. My stomach dropped into free fall. A psychiatrist, he continued. Dr. Reyna. At the hospital. Those texts you found, they're from her. Why didn't you tell me? Because I'm ashamed. His voice cracked. Because I'm supposed to be the one who helps people, and I can't even help myself. I've been having thoughts. Intrusive thoughts. About self-harm. About being inadequate. About people watching me, judging me. He rubbed his face. The walks help. They're the only thing that helps. When I'm moving, I'm not trapped inside my head. Why were you standing outside the Castellanos' house? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. A child died, he finally said. 10 months ago, before we moved here. Bacterial meningitis. 9 years old. I did everything right, everything, but it wasn't enough. The parents. They blamed me. Said I should have caught it sooner, should have pushed harder for the spinal tap. My hands went cold. Who was the child? David looked at me with devastated eyes. Leo Castellano. Sophia's little brother. The room tilted. Marco was the father? I whispered. They never forgave me. Even though the attending physician said it was textbook treatment, even though meningitis kills in hours sometimes, they needed someone to blame. Marco threatened me. Teresa sent letters to the hospital. I requested a transfer to get away from it. It took 3 months to process everything, find this house, start over. You never told me. I wanted to forget. I wanted to start over. And then we moved here, and I thought, he laughed bitterly. What are the chances, right? That our next-door neighbors would be them. But they'd moved too, sold their old house because there were too many memories. And somehow we all ended up here. Do they know it's you? Marco knows. I saw it in his eyes the first time we passed each other getting mail. He recognized me immediately. That's why I've been avoiding them. But I can't stop thinking about Leo. About what I could have done differently. Sometimes I stand outside their house and just remember. I know it's not healthy. Dr. Reyna says I'm punishing myself. Everything clicked into horrible place. The accusation. The voicemail. Marco saying I remember. This wasn't about David being inappropriate. This was about revenge. I tried to explain to Teresa. Sunday afternoon, I knocked on their door. She answered with Sophia hovering behind her, and the look Teresa gave me could have frozen blood. Please, I said. Can we talk? There's nothing to discuss. David wasn't looking in Sophia's window. He would never. I saw him, Emma. With my own eyes. But you didn't. You saw someone in a hoodie. In the dark. From inside your house. You couldn't have been sure. I was sure enough. She started closing the door. He tried to save your son. The words burst out of me. He did everything he could for Leo. He's been traumatized by it. That's why he walks at night, he has insomnia from the guilt. Teresa's face drained of color. For a second, I thought I'd gotten through to her. Then Sophia spoke from behind her mother. He was there before, too, she said quietly. I saw him a few weeks ago. Looking up at my window. Teresa's eyes hardened. She slammed the door. I stood there on their porch, shaking. By Monday, anonymous letters started arriving at our house. Printed articles about registered predators with David's face crudely photoshopped onto mugshots. A flyer warning neighbors about dangerous individuals in the community. Someone spray-painted pervert on our garbage cans. David stopped going outside. Stopped showering regularly. He slept 18 hours a day, woke up only to stare at nothing. I tried to hold us together, but we were already broken. I just hadn't been willing to see it. Wednesday afternoon, I was in my art studio at school when there was a knock on the door. Sophia Castellano stood there, eyes red from crying. "Can I talk to you?" she whispered. I should have said no. Should have called her parents, protected myself. But she looked so small and scared. "Come in." She sat at one of the work tables, fingers tracing the wood grain. Not looking at me. "I lied," she finally said. My heart stopped. "What?" "About seeing Mr. Chen before." "I didn't. But Dad told me." She swallowed hard. "He said to tell the police that I'd seen him watching me for months. That he'd been creepy. That I felt unsafe." "Why would he tell you that?" "Because of Leo." Tears spilled over. Dad's been so angry since Leo died. He blames everyone, the doctors, Mom, himself. When we moved here, we thought it would help. Then one day he saw Mr. Chen getting his mail and recognized him from the hospital. He came inside shaking. Mom didn't understand why he was so upset, but he told me later. He said it was fate. A chance to make things right. "Sophia, he promised me we could go to Disney if I remembered correctly for the detective." That's what he called it. Remembering correctly. She looked up at me with devastated eyes. "I didn't know it would get this bad. I thought. I don't know what I thought." I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. "I need to record this. Will you repeat what you just told me?" She nodded. I opened the voice recorder app. Sophia told the whole story again, how Marco had coached her, the specific details he told her to include, the promises he'd made. When she finished, I had 5 minutes of clear evidence. "Thank you," I said. "You did the right thing." She left through the side door, and I immediately tried to play back the recording to make sure it saved properly. My phone froze. I tried again. The screen glitched, went black, then restarted. When it came back on, my voice recorder app was empty. 5 minutes of Sophia's confession, gone. My hands started shaking. I checked my recently deleted folder. Nothing there. I checked my cloud backup. Access denied. Someone had remotely accessed my phone and deleted the evidence. I ran a security scan using an app I downloaded after reading about phone security. The results made my blood run cold. Spyware. Installed 2 weeks ago. Someone had been monitoring my texts, calls, emails, and location data. I traced the IP address of the last remote access point using the security app's logs. It belonged to Marco Castellano's home network. That's when I knew I was in real danger. Marco hadn't just been orchestrating revenge against David. He'd been watching me. Listening to everything. He knew I'd talked to Sophia. Knew she'd confessed. And he needed to make sure I couldn't prove it. I looked out the classroom window. In the parking lot, a white sedan idled near my car. The same one that had been on our street. I was being followed. Marco must have been tracking David's schedule at the hospital to time his manipulative texts perfectly, and now he was tracking me. I couldn't go to the police. I'd overheard at a community event that Marco's brother-in-law was a sergeant in the local department. No wonder the investigation had been so aggressive, so willing to assume David's guilt. I needed help, and I needed it from someone Marco couldn't influence. I drove to County General Hospital, checking my rearview mirror constantly. The white sedan stayed 3 cars back but never lost me. At the hospital, I asked for Dr. Reina. The psychiatrist David had supposedly been texting. She met me in a conference room, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. "I need to know about David Chen's treatment," I said. "I can't discuss patient information. He's my husband, and he's being framed. Please." "Has he been texting you late at night?" Dr. Reina frowned. "Mrs. Chen, I don't give my personal number to patients. All communication goes through the hospital portal. And I've been treating your husband for 3 weeks, but we've never texted." The room spun. "But he showed me, he said the texts were from you. May I see?" I showed her David's phone records. She examined them, then pulled up her own records. "These don't match my number or our communication log. Someone has been impersonating me." Marco. It had to be Marco. He'd been catfishing David, sending messages at specific times to manipulate him into taking those late-night walks. Creating patterns. Building a case. "I need your help documenting this," I said. "Everything, the fake texts, the spyware, the coach testimony. Can you help me?" Dr. Reina studied me for a long moment. "Yes," she said. "Let's start with what you know." We spent 2 hours compiling evidence. Dr. Reina had records of David's actual appointments, none of the times the texts were sent. We documented the spyware on my phone, traced the IP addresses, created a timeline. I told her about Sophia's confession and how the recording had been deleted. "We need to document everything on a clean device," Dr. Reina said. She pulled out her tablet. "Use this. Your phone is compromised." She opened a recording app and I explained everything that had happened: the spyware, the deleted confession, Marco's surveillance, the coach testimony. Then Dr. Reina said something that changed everything. "There's a community meeting tonight. The Neighborhood Watch. Marco called it specifically to discuss safety concerns about your husband." My stomach dropped. "He's going to publicly destroy David?" "Or," Dr. Reina said, "you're going to publicly expose him." She helped me contact a cybersecurity expert she knew, a former patient's parent who owed her a favor. Within an hour, he documented every unauthorized access to my phone, traced every connection back to Marco's network, and created a presentation of evidence. We saved everything to Dr. Reina's cloud account, somewhere Marco couldn't reach. The meeting was at the community center at 7. By 6:45, every folding chair was filled. I recognized most of our neighbors, the Patels from 2 doors down, Mrs. Kowalski, who always had too many opinions about lawn care, the Martinez family with their golden retriever. David didn't come. I told him to stay home. If this went wrong, I didn't want him there to watch his life end. Marco stood at the front, looking righteous and grief-stricken in equal measure. Teresa sat beside him, hands folded in her lap. Sophia was there too, staring at the floor. Marco cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. I know this is uncomfortable, but we need to talk about safety. Specifically, about the predator living among us." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "My daughter has been targeted by a neighbor who has repeatedly been caught peering into her bedroom window. The police are investigating, but investigations take time. In the meantime, our children are at risk." My hands were shaking so badly I had to clutch them together. But I stood up. "That's not true," I said. Marco's head snapped toward me. His eyes were cold. Calculating. "Emma, I know this is hard for you to accept. You coached Sophia to lie." I held up Dr. Reina's tablet. "She came to me yesterday and confessed. You promised her a trip to Disney if she remembered correctly for the police." The room went silent. "That's absurd," Marco said, but something flickered in his expression. "She's a traumatized child. You're putting words in her mouth." "Am I?" I played the video I'd recorded earlier that day on Dr. Reina's tablet, my own testimony about Sophia's confession, time-stamped and detailed. Then I showed them Dr. Reina's records explaining the discrepancies in David's supposed text messages, how the number didn't match hers, how the timing didn't align with any actual appointments. Finally, I displayed the cybersecurity report. Every illegal access to my phone. Every deletion. Every surveillance log. All traced back to Marco's home network. You've been impersonating David's psychiatrist, I said. Manipulating him into taking walks at specific times so you could claim he was stalking your daughter. You installed spyware on my phone to monitor our conversations. You even deleted Sophia's confession after she recorded it on my phone. And you coached your daughter to give false testimony to police. The cybersecurity expert had included screenshots showing the exact timestamps of Marco's remote access to my device, including the access that deleted Sophia's original recording. Marco's face was turning red. This is ridiculous. I'm trying to protect my daughter from the man who killed my son. David didn't kill Leo. My voice cracked. Bacterial meningitis killed Leo. David tried to save him. He did everything right, and he's been carrying the guilt ever since. But you can't accept that. You need someone to blame because the truth is too painful. Teresa's face crumbled. She looked at Marco like she was seeing him for the first time. You told her to lie? She whispered. You put spyware on Emma's phone? For her safety, you told our daughter to lie? The room erupted. Neighbors talking over each other, some in shock, some angry. Mrs. Patel stood up. I saw that white sedan. It's been on our street for weeks. I thought it was suspicious. I have security footage, Mr. Martinez added. From last Tuesday. The night of the incident. You want to see it? Marco's face went through a dozen expressions: rage, panic, calculation. Then he lunged forward, pointing at me. You think you know him? You think you understand? His voice was raw, animalistic. Ask David why he really requested the transfer. Ask him about the other child who died. There was another one before Leo, Emma. A little girl. Ask him about Maya. Two neighbors grabbed Marco as he tried to push toward me. Someone had already called the police. But his words had already done their damage. The seed of doubt, replanted in my chest. They arrested Marco that night. Criminal harassment. Cyberstalking. Conspiracy to file false reports. Unauthorized computer access. Possibly more charges pending. Teresa filed for divorce 3 days later. She and Sophia moved in with her sister 2 towns over. Before they left, Teresa came to our door. I'm sorry, she said. Her eyes were hollow. I'm so sorry. I should have questioned it. I should have protected her from him instead of. I just wanted Leo back so badly that I stopped thinking clearly. I didn't know what to say. Sorry seemed too small for the crater Marco had left in all our lives. Sophia sent me a charcoal drawing a week later. A self-portrait, but in the corner, she'd drawn a small figure with devil horns. Her father. Some children see things clearly long before adults will admit them. But Marco's final words kept echoing. Ask him about the other child. 2 weeks after the arrest, David finally told me. We were sitting on the porch, separately, but together. The evening was cool, and I could smell Mrs. Kowalski's roses from across the street. There was another patient, David said quietly. Before Leo. 2 years before we moved. A 6-year-old girl named Maya. She came in with flu-like symptoms. I did the assessment, started treatment. But she deteriorated overnight. By morning, she was gone. What happened? Sepsis. Sudden onset. No one could have predicted it. The attending reviewed everything. I'd done everything by the book. But her parents. He swallowed hard. They looked at me the way Marco did. Like I was a murderer. Is that why you requested the transfer? Partly. But mostly because I couldn't stop seeing her. Every shift, every pediatric patient, I kept thinking, what if I miss something? What if I'm not good enough? The intrusive thoughts started then. The insomnia. The feeling that I was being watched, judged. After Leo died, it got so much worse. I couldn't stay. I had to leave. He looked at me. I'm not a predator, Emma. I'm just someone who couldn't save everyone, and it broke something in me. That's the truth. That's all of it. I believed him. Or I wanted to believe him. Maybe they're the same thing. 3 months later, we're still here. David was cleared and reinstated at the hospital. Administrative leave lifted, full apology issued. They offered him counseling, he's still going. But he's different now. Hollower. Like something essential was scooped out of him. We're different. We've started having dinner together again. Real conversations, not just logistics. Last week, we even laughed at something stupid on TV. But we still sleep in separate rooms. I need time, I told him. To rebuild trust. I understand, he said. We're both being so careful with each other. It's exhausting. I still tutor, but not Sophia. Not any of the neighborhood kids. The requests dried up anyway after the scandal. Some stains don't wash out. My phone buzzes at night sometimes, and my heart still races before I remember, the spyware is gone. The white sedan isn't coming back. Marco is gone. But hypervigilance doesn't have an off switch. Last week, I was organizing my art supplies and found an old drawing of Sophia's from before everything exploded. A self-portrait from September, when she was still just a kid who liked charcoal and needed help with perspective. In the corner, almost hidden in the shadows, she'd drawn a small figure in a window. Watching. Had she known something then? Had she seen her father standing outside at night, planning his revenge? Or had it been innocent, just a child's unconscious processing of feeling observed? I stared at that drawing for 20 minutes, trying to decode it. Then I filed it in my finished projects folder and closed the drawer. Some questions don't need answers. Some mysteries are better left sealed away where they can't hurt you anymore. But here's the thing about sealed things, you always know they're there. Last night, I woke up at 3:07 a.m., old habits die hard. That specific time is carved into my nervous system now. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle. The refrigerator hummed, that same constant tone that used to mean safety and now just means time passing. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Coming from David's room, moving toward the stairs. I held my breath. The footsteps went down, not toward my room. I heard the side door open and close quietly. He was going for one of his walks. I should have gone back to sleep. Dr. Reyna said the walks are therapeutic, part of his recovery. He's allowed to move through the world without my surveillance. But I lay there listening. 10 minutes passed. 15. I got up and looked out the window. The street was empty. No David. No white sedan. Just sodium streetlights casting their orange glow on empty pavement. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. David was standing across the street, hands in his pockets, looking at our house. Just looking. His face in the streetlight looked sad and lost and far away. After a minute, he turned and kept walking. I went back to bed. I didn't follow him. I chose trust, or something like it. But I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, counting the minutes until I heard the side door open again. Heard his footsteps climb the stairs. Heard his bedroom door close. Only then did I let myself relax. Only then did I close my eyes. And in that space between waking and sleep, I thought, this is marriage now. This is what love looks like after it's been shattered and glued back together. The cracks are still visible. The pieces don't fit quite right. But it's still standing. For now. For tonight. For as long as I can keep listening for footsteps in the dark and convincing myself they're going where they should be. The truth is, I don't know what I'd find if I followed him all the way to wherever he goes on those walks. I don't know what thoughts he's walking away from, or walking toward. And maybe, probably, I never will. Because there are things in a marriage you choose not to know. Spaces you leave dark. Questions you decide not to ask. Not because you trust completely. But because you love imperfectly. And imperfect love is still love. Isn't it? I tell myself that as the sky lightens toward dawn. As Tuesday becomes Wednesday becomes another day of teaching teenagers about perspective and light and shadow. As my husband sleeps in his room and I sleep in mine, separated by drywall and history and all the things we're pretending to be okay with. The house settles. The refrigerator hums. And somewhere in the dark, a 12-year-old girl is learning that adults are complicated and truth is slippery and sometimes the monsters aren't real. Sometimes they're just grief in a human costume. Sometimes they're the people we love, carrying damage we can't fix. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person in the window isn't looking in. They're looking for a way out. I close my eyes. I breathe. I listen. And I wait for morning.
Story 4.
At a wedding, I overheard my father telling guests that my brother was the real success story of the family. Mom added, "Finally, someone who makes us proud, unlike some others." My uncle agreed, "Finally, someone worth bragging about at events." My aunt nodded, "Some siblings just outshine the others completely." When my daughter was about to stand up and speak her mind, I gently pulled her down. Instead, I opened my banking app and canceled all upcoming payments, including his mortgage, utility bills, and the loan for my brother's failing business. He got the alert 5 minutes later and went pale. "I need to tell you something that happened 3 months ago, and I'm still not sure if I'm the villain or the hero of this story. Maybe I'm both." You know that moment when you realize your entire family sees you as the disappointment? Well, I got mine at my cousin Rachel's wedding, standing behind a marble pillar in the hotel ballroom, holding a glass of sparkling cider and watching my brother charm another circle of relatives. "Marcus is the real success story of the family," my father was saying, his chest puffed out like he personally engineered my brother's achievements. "Finally got his accounting firm off the ground this year. Making 6 figures now." What he didn't mention was that I'd been the one writing the checks to keep that success story afloat for the past 18 months. My mother leaned in closer to the group, lowering her voice just enough to make it feel like gossip. "Finally, someone who makes us proud, unlike some others." Her eyes flicked toward me across the room, and I felt my stomach drop. You know how it is with siblings. One always outshines the other. My Uncle Dave, Mom's brother who'd borrowed $5,000 from me last Christmas and conveniently forgot to pay it back, nodded sagely. "Finally, someone worth bragging about at events. Marcus has that executive presence, you know?" That's when my Aunt Linda decided to twist the knife a little deeper. "Some siblings just outshine the others completely. It's nature, I suppose. Sarah's always been more of the support system type. Support system type. Like I was furniture." I felt my 15-year-old daughter Emma tense beside me. She'd inherited my temper but thankfully not my patience for family politics. I could see her jaw clench, could practically hear the sarcastic comeback forming on her tongue. When she started to stand up, probably to inform the entire wedding party exactly what kind of support system had been keeping their golden boy afloat, I gently pulled her back down. "Not here, sweetheart," I whispered, though every cell in my body wanted to let her loose on them. Instead, I did something else entirely. I opened my banking app. "Now, before you judge me, let me paint you the full picture of just how much support I've been providing to the family's success story. Because when I say I've been keeping Marcus afloat, I don't mean I'd helped him out with rent a few times. I mean I'd basically become his personal bank. It started 2 years ago when he decided to leave his stable corporate job to start his own accounting firm. Noble goal, right? Except Marcus had about as much business sense as a goldfish and the financial planning skills of a teenager with their first credit card. "I just need a small loan to get started," he'd said over dinner at Mom and Dad's house. "Maybe $15,000 to cover the initial setup costs." I'd written the check that night. Family helps family, after all. 6 months later, "Sarah, the client base is growing slower than expected. Could you cover my mortgage this month? Just until the quarterly payments start coming in." Another 6 months, "The office lease is more expensive than I budgeted for. And Emma needs new school clothes anyway, right? What's another $1,000 on top of everything else?" Then came the utilities. The business insurance. The new computer system. The marketing expenses. The networking events that seemed suspiciously like expensive dinners at steakhouses. By the time Rachel's wedding rolled around, I was paying his mortgage, his office rent, his utilities, his car payment, and had personally guaranteed a $15,000 business loan that was supposed to be for essential equipment upgrades. You want to know the really beautiful part? Nobody in the family knew any of this except Marcus and me. As far as everyone else was concerned, my little brother was a self-made success story who'd pulled himself up by his bootstraps and built something from nothing. Meanwhile, I was the family underachiever who worked in just insurance, never mind that I was a senior claims investigator making decent money and had managed to save enough to essentially subsidize another person's entire lifestyle. So there I was, listening to my parents gush about Marcus's achievements while I mentally calculated that I'd invested roughly $47,000 in those achievements over the past 18 months. Emma squeezed my hand. "Mom, this is insane. You should tell them." "I know, baby. I know." But telling them wouldn't have felt nearly as satisfying as what I did instead. I scrolled through my banking app to the automatic payments section. Marcus's mortgage, scheduled for the 15th of every month, $1,200. His office lease, due the 1st, $1,800. Utilities for both his house and office, scattered throughout the month, usually totaling about $400. The business loan payment, $500 and change, due the 20th. One by one, I canceled every single recurring payment. The mortgage cancellation went through immediately, thank goodness for modern banking technology. The office lease cancellation would take effect before the next payment date. Utilities, canceled. Loan payment, canceled. Then I sent Marcus a text, "Hey, just wanted to let you know I canceled all the auto payments from my account. Figured since you're doing so well now, you won't need the help anymore. Congrats on the success." I watched him across the room as his phone buzzed. Watched him glance at it casually, probably expecting a work email or a congratulatory text from another wedding guest. I've never seen someone's face change color so dramatically in such a short time. He went from that healthy glow of someone who'd been basking in praise to the pale green of someone who'd just realized they were about to lose everything. His hand started shaking slightly as he typed back frantically, and I watched him excuse himself from his admiring audience to step outside. My phone buzzed 30 seconds later. "Sarah, what the heck? You can't just cancel everything without warning. I have payments due next week." I texted back, "I heard Dad telling everyone how successful you are. Figured you didn't need your big sister propping you up anymore. This isn't funny. I could lose the house. Then I guess it's a good thing you're such a success story. Maybe ask Dad for help, he seems really proud of your achievements." Emma was reading over my shoulder, trying not to grin. "Mom, you're savage." The thing is, I wasn't trying to be savage. Well, maybe a little. But mostly I was just tired. Tired of being the invisible foundation that everyone else built their stories on. Tired of being treated like the family failure while simultaneously being the family bailout plan. Marcus tried calling twice, but I was in no mood to talk. The music was too loud anyway, and I was actually starting to enjoy watching him pace back and forth on the hotel terrace, gesticulating wildly into his phone. "Is Uncle Marcus okay?" Emma asked, nodding toward the window. "He looks like he's about to have a panic attack. He'll figure it out. He's the family success story, remember?" That's when things got interesting. Because apparently Marcus decided his best strategy was to rope in reinforcements. My mother appeared at my table 10 minutes later, her face wearing that particular expression she got when she was about to deliver a lecture disguised as a heart-to-heart. "Sarah, honey, Marcus mentioned you two had some kind of misunderstanding about finances?" I took a sip of my cider and smiled pleasantly. "No misunderstanding at all. I just decided to stop enabling his dependency." "Enabling?" "Sweetheart, family helps family. Marcus is going through a rough patch, but his business is really starting to take off. Mom." I set down my glass and looked her directly in the eyes. "How much money do you think I've given Marcus in the past 2 years?" She blinked, clearly thrown by the directness of the question. "Well, I don't know the exact amount, but I'm sure whatever help you've provided, $47,000. The words hung in the air between us like a bomb that hadn't quite exploded yet. That's not possible," she said, but her voice had lost its confident tone. "Mortgage, $1,200 a month for 18 months. That's $21,600. Office lease, $1,800 a month for 12 months. Another $21,600. Utilities averaging $400 a month. Business loan payments. Equipment purchases. Emergency cash flow loans that never got repaid." I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app. "Would you like to see the transaction history?" My mother stared at the screen, scrolling through months and months of payments, her face growing paler with each entry. But Marcus said he was doing well. He said the business was profitable." "Marcus says a lot of things, Mom. The reality is that I've been subsidizing his entire lifestyle since he started this venture. And all this time, you've been treating me like the family disappointment while praising him as the success story." Emma was watching this exchange with the fascination of someone witnessing a particularly dramatic reality show episode. My mother, meanwhile, was doing rapid mental math and clearly not liking the results. "Sarah, I had no idea. Marcus never told us that you were." "Of course he didn't. Because then you'd know that your success story is actually just an expensive hobby I've been financing." That's when my father decided to join the conversation, probably sent over by Marcus, who was still pacing outside like a caged animal. "Sarah, your mother says there's been some confusion about Marcus's situation." "No confusion, Dad. Just clarity. For the first time in 2 years, actually." I showed him the phone screen. Watched him scroll through the payment history. Watched his expression change from confusion to disbelief to something that might have been shame. I don't understand, he said finally. Marcus told us the business was self-sufficient. He said he was making 6 figures. He might be making 6 figures, I said. But apparently he's also spending 7 figures, with me covering the difference. Emma leaned forward. Grandpa, Mom's been paying for everything. Uncle Marcus's house, his office, his car, even that fancy watch he was showing off last Christmas. The watch comment hit home. I could see Dad remembering the day Marcus had proudly displayed his new Rolex, talking about how business was so good he decided to treat himself. The watch I bought him for closing his first major client, I added helpfully. He said it would help with his professional image. My father sank into the chair across from me, looking like someone had just explained that his prized race horse was actually a painted donkey. Sarah, why didn't you tell us any of this? Because you never asked. Because every family gathering turned into a Marcus appreciation session where everyone talked about how proud you were of him and how disappointed you were in me. Because I kept thinking that eventually he'd actually become successful and I could stop propping him up. I shrugged. But listening to you tonight, I realized that's never going to happen. He's never going to stand on his own as long as I'm there to catch him when he falls. My mother was still staring at my phone screen like she could make the numbers change through sheer force of will. But if you stop the payments, she said slowly, he'll lose everything. Yes, I agreed. That's generally what happens when you can't afford your lifestyle. Sarah, please, my father said. He's your brother. Family helps family. I have been helping family, Dad. For 2 years. I've helped him more than anyone else in this room has helped anyone else in their entire lives. What I haven't been getting is family treating me like family. Emma reached over and squeezed my hand. At least someone in this conversation understood what was happening. So what do you want? Mom asked. An apology? Recognition? We can tell people about your contributions. I don't want recognition, Mom. I want basic respect. I want you to stop treating me like the family failure while I'm literally funding the family's success story. That's when Marcus finally worked up the courage to come back inside. He looked like he'd been through a wind tunnel, hair messed up, tie crooked, face still that interesting shade of pale green. Sarah, he said, sliding into the chair next to Dad. We need to talk. No, Marcus, we really don't. We've talked plenty over the past 2 years. Now you get to figure things out on your own. You can't just cut me off without warning. I have commitments. Responsibilities. You mean the commitments and responsibilities I've been handling for you? He glanced around the table, probably realizing for the first time that Mom and Dad now knew the truth about his financial situation. It's not what you think, he said to them. Sarah's making it sound worse than it is. The business is doing well, I just needed some temporary support during the startup phase. 18 months isn't temporary, Marcus, I interrupted. And paying for your Rolex and your fancy dinners isn't business support. Those were legitimate business expenses. Really? The weekend trip to Vegas was a business expense? The new golf clubs? The designer suits? Emma was practically bouncing in her seat. She'd never seen the adults in the family have this kind of blunt conversation before. Uncle Marcus, she said sweetly, maybe you could ask Grandpa and Grandma for help instead? Since they're so proud of your success. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus looked at our parents. Our parents looked at Marcus. Everyone looked at me. Well? I asked. Dad, you were just telling everyone how proud you are of Marcus's achievements. Mom, you said he's the one who finally makes you proud. Uncle Dave thinks he's worth bragging about. Why don't you all help support his continued success? The thing about putting people on the spot like that is you find out very quickly who's actually willing to back up their words with actions. Dad cleared his throat. Well, your mother and I are on a fixed income now. We can't really afford to. I'm not asking you to match what I've been paying, I said. Just contribute something. 100 a month? 50? Show Marcus that family really does help family. More silence. Mom fidgeted with her wedding napkin. Sarah, you know we would if we could, but with Dad's medical bills and the house maintenance. So let me get this straight, I said. You can afford to criticize my life choices and compare me unfavorably to Marcus at every family gathering, but you can't afford to actually support the son you're so proud of? Uncle Dave had appeared sometime during this conversation, probably drawn by the obvious tension at our table. Everything okay over here? He asked, in that fake concerned voice people use when they really want gossip material. Perfect timing, Uncle Dave, I said. Marcus needs financial support to maintain his successful business. Since you were just saying how worth bragging about he is, I'm sure you'd be happy to help out. Dave's smile faltered. Oh, well, you know how it is. Times are tight for everyone. Not tight enough to prevent you from borrowing $5,000 from me last Christmas, though. That wiped the smile completely off his face. Sarah, Marcus said desperately, can we please discuss this privately? Why? So you can convince me to keep funding your lifestyle while everyone else gets to enjoy the fiction that you're self-sufficient? I don't think so. Emma leaned over to me. Mom, I think Uncle Marcus is sweating through his shirt. She was right. There were visible sweat stains spreading across his expensive dress shirt, the one I'd probably paid for, directly or indirectly. Look, Marcus said, I admit I should have been more transparent about the arrangement. But cutting off all support at once isn't fair. Give me 6 months to transition. 6 months to find another sucker, you mean? That's not fair. You know what's not fair, Marcus? Having your entire family treat you like a disappointment while you're secretly funding their favorite son's life. That's what's not fair. My mother tried to play peacemaker. Sarah, honey, I think we all need to take a step back here. This is Rachel's wedding day, and we're creating a scene. I'm not creating anything, Mom. I'm just stopping doing something I should have stopped doing a long time ago. Dad leaned forward. Sarah, what would it take for you to reconsider? If we all acknowledged your contributions more publicly. Dad, this isn't about public acknowledgement. This is about respect. And you can't retroactively respect someone. Either you see me as a valuable member of this family who deserves basic courtesy, or you don't. Of course we see you that way, Mom said, but she couldn't quite meet my eyes. Really? Because 20 minutes ago you were telling a room full of people that Marcus was the child who finally made you proud, unlike some others. Was I supposed to feel valued by that? The silence stretched out again. Emma was taking mental notes of everything, probably planning to recount this entire conversation to her friends later. What if, Marcus said carefully, we restructured the arrangement? Made it more formal, like a business loan with proper terms and repayment schedules? I almost laughed. Marcus, you've never repaid a single dollar of anything I've given you. What makes you think a formal loan would be any different? Because now I understand how serious the situation is. The situation has been serious for 18 months. The only thing that changed tonight is that everyone else finally knows about it. Uncle Dave was looking increasingly uncomfortable, probably realizing that his own unpaid debt might come up next. You know what? I said, standing up. I'm done with this conversation. Marcus, you have until the end of the month to figure out your finances. After that, you're on your own. Sarah, please, Emma, ready to go? My daughter practically jumped out of her chair. So ready. As we walked away from the table, I could hear the frantic whispering behind us. Mom trying to convince Dad they should offer to help. Dad explaining why that wasn't realistic. Marcus probably calculating how many days he had before his next payment was due. Emma waited until we were in the car before she started laughing. Mom, that was amazing. Did you see Uncle Marcus's face when you showed Grandma the bank statements? I saw it. And when you asked Grandpa to help support his success story. Priceless. I started the engine and pulled out of the hotel parking lot. I probably shouldn't have aired all that dirty laundry at a wedding, are you kidding? That was the most interesting thing that happened all night. Plus, Cousin Rachel was so busy with her own drama that she didn't even notice. Emma was right about that. The bride had been dealing with some issue involving the caterers and her new mother-in-law, completely oblivious to the financial family drama playing out at table 6. Do you think Uncle Marcus will actually figure it out? Emma asked. Honestly? Probably not on his own. He'll likely have to sell the house, downsize the office, and go back to working for someone else. Good. Maybe then Grandma and Grandpa will stop acting like he walks on water. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You know, sweetheart, family relationships are complicated. I don't want you to think it's okay to just cut people off when they disappoint you. Mom, they weren't just disappointing you. They were using you and treating you like garbage at the same time. That's not family relationships being complicated. That's family relationships being toxic. Sometimes 15-year-olds see things more clearly than adults do. My phone started buzzing with texts as we drove home. Marcus, obviously, but also Mom and Dad, and even Uncle Dave. Want me to read them? Emma offered. Not really. But go ahead. Uncle Marcus says. Oh wow, he's really freaking out. Sarah, please reconsider. I can lose everything. This will destroy my credit. Please call me back. Then like 6 more messages basically saying the same thing. What about the others? Grandma says she's sorry if she hurt your feelings and she hopes you can work things out with Uncle Marcus. Grandpa says he understands you're upset, but cutting off family isn't the answer. Emma paused. Uncle Dave wants to know if you're serious about the Christmas loan thing. I had to laugh at that. Tell Uncle Dave that yes, I remember exactly how much he owes me, and since we're apparently being honest about family finances now, I'd like it back. Really? Really? Type exactly that. Emma gleefully sent the message. Oh, he's typing back. He says he thought that was a gift. Tell him gifts don't get promised to be repaid with interest. Mom, you're on fire tonight. By the time we got home, Marcus had called 4 times and sent 12 text messages, each more desperate than the last. Mom had sent 3 carefully worded messages trying to guilt me into changing my mind. Dad had sent 1 message asking if we could have a family meeting to work things out. I turned off my phone. So what happens now? Emma asked as we changed out of our wedding clothes. Now Uncle Marcus learns to live within his means. And if he doesn't? Then he faces the consequences of his choices, just like everyone else has too. Emma flopped down on my bed. Are you going to miss it? Miss what? Being the family ATM. I thought about it for a moment. You know what I'm going to miss? The illusion that I was helping someone I cared about build something meaningful. What I'm not going to miss is paying for that illusion while being treated like the family disappointment. Do you think they'll change? Like, start treating you better now that they know the truth? That was the $1,000,000 question, wasn't it? I don't know, sweetheart. People can change, but they have to want to change. And they have to be willing to admit they were wrong first. 3 weeks later, I got my answer. Marcus lost the house. Not immediately, he managed to scrape together 1 more mortgage payment by borrowing against his credit cards. But when the office lease came due and he couldn't pay it, he had to close the business. Without the business income, even the inflated income he'd been claiming, he couldn't qualify for refinancing. The house went on the market 2 months after Rachel's wedding. Mom called me the day Marcus moved back in with them. Sarah, I hope you're happy, she said, skipping right past any greeting. Your brother is starting over from nothing because you decided to be vindictive. I decided to stop being an enabler, Mom. There's a difference. He lost everything. He lost things he couldn't afford to keep without my help. That's not the same as losing everything. You could have weaned him off gradually. Given him time to adjust. I gave him 18 months to adjust. How much more time did he need? There was a long pause. You've changed, Sarah. You used to be more compassionate. I'm still compassionate, Mom. I'm just not stupid anymore. She hung up on me. Dad called a few days later with a different approach. Sarah, your mother is really upset about this whole situation. I can imagine. Marcus is having a hard time finding work. Apparently closing the business has hurt his reputation in the industry. That's unfortunate. Is there any chance you'd consider helping him with just the basics? Maybe rent for a small apartment while he gets back on his feet? Dad, let me ask you something. In the past 3 months, since you learned the truth about Marcus's situation, how many times have you called to ask how I'm doing? Well, That's different. You're clearly doing fine. I'm doing fine because I make good financial decisions and live within my means. Marcus isn't doing fine because he doesn't. That's not my problem to solve anymore. But he's family? So am I, Dad. So am I. Emma, who had been listening to this conversation from the kitchen, gave me a thumbs up when I hung up. Still think you did the right thing? She asked. Ask me in a year. It's been 4 months now since Rachel's wedding. Marcus found a job working for a small accounting firm, not as a partner or owner, just as a regular employee. He's living with Mom and Dad, which I'm sure is thrilling for everyone involved. Uncle Dave paid me back the $5,000, along with an awkward apology about misunderstanding the nature of the loan. Apparently public accountability works wonders for people's memories. Mom and Dad still call occasionally, but the conversations are strained. They want me to be the bigger person and help Marcus get back on his feet. I want them to understand that I was already the bigger person for 18 months, and that being the bigger person doesn't mean being the family doormat forever. Emma thinks I should cut them all off completely, but I'm not ready for that. Despite everything, they're still my family. I just need them to learn how to treat me like family too. The interesting thing is what I've learned about myself through all this. For years, I thought I was being generous and supportive. It turns out I was actually being controlling and enabling. I was so invested in Marcus's success that I was literally purchasing, that I never stopped to ask whether he actually wanted to be successful, or just wanted to look successful. There's a difference between helping someone achieve their goals and achieving their goals for them. I miss the relationship I thought I had with my brother. I don't miss the relationship I actually had with him. And you know what? My bank account is looking pretty healthy these days. Turns out when you stop spending $1,200 a month on someone else's mortgage, you have a lot more money for your own priorities. Emma and I are planning a trip to Europe this summer. Our first real vacation in years. Marcus hasn't asked to come along. He hasn't asked for anything, actually, since that night at the wedding. I think he finally understands that the Bank of Sarah is permanently closed for business. Sometimes I wonder if I should have handled things differently. Been more diplomatic, given him more warning, worked out some kind of gradual transition plan. But then I remember the look on my parents' faces when they learned the truth. The shock, the disbelief, the sudden recalculation of everything they thought they knew about their children's lives. They needed to know. Marcus needed to know. And I needed to know that I could stand up for myself, even when it meant disappointing people I love. The family dynamic is still sorting itself out. We'll probably never go back to the way things were before Rachel's wedding, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe the way things were before wasn't actually working for anyone except Marcus. At the next family gathering, my cousin Mike's birthday party, I'll be interested to see how I'm introduced to new people. Will I still be the quiet sister who works in insurance? Or will I be something else entirely? Well, I found out sooner than expected. Mike's party was last weekend, and let me tell you, the energy in that room was something else entirely. You know how family gatherings usually have this predictable rhythm? The same conversations, the same seating arrangements, the same people gravitating toward the same corners? This was nothing like that. Emma and I walked in, and it was like someone had hit pause on a movie. Not complete silence, but that noticeable dip in conversation volume that happens when something interesting is about to unfold. Marcus was already there, of course, standing near the snack table with Mom and Dad. He looked smaller somehow. Not just physically, though he had lost some weight. There was something diminished about his presence, like someone had turned down his volume. Aunt Sarah. My nephew Tyler, Mike's 12-year-old, bounded over with the kind of enthusiasm only kids can muster. Mom said you're rich now. Emma snorted. Not rich, Tyler. Just not broke from paying for other people's stuff. Emma, I warned, but I was fighting a smile. My sister-in-law Jennifer appeared, looking mortified. Tyler, we talked about this. You can't just... It's fine, Jen, I said. Kids are honest. It's refreshing. Jennifer lowered her voice. Sarah, I just want you to know that Mike and I think you did the right thing. We've been watching this whole Marcus situation for years, and honestly, we were wondering when you'd finally put your foot down. That was news to me. You knew? We suspected. Marcus always had money for things that didn't match up with what we knew about new businesses. And whenever we asked him for advice about our own finances, he'd get vague and change the subject. Mike joined us, beer in hand. Plus, remember that time he offered to loan us money for the kitchen renovation? We almost said yes until Jen pointed out that it was weird for someone who was supposedly bootstrapping a startup to have $20,000 lying around. You were going to borrow money from Marcus? Emma asked, incredulous. We didn't know the money was actually coming from your mom, Jennifer said. If we had, we would have just asked her directly. I felt a little surge of warmth. At least some family members had functioning brain cells. Speaking of which, Mike said, if you're ever looking to invest that money you're saving now, we're thinking about expanding the catering business. Proper terms, actual business plan, legitimate return on investment. Mike. Jennifer elbowed him. What? I'm just saying, if she's going to help family financially, she should help family that actually knows how to handle money. That's when things got awkward, because Marcus chose that moment to walk over. Sarah, he said, nodding stiffly. Emma. Uncle Marcus, Emma replied with a kind of polite coolness that teenagers have perfected. I was hoping we could talk, Marcus said to me. We're talking now. I meant privately. Mike and Jennifer suddenly found the appetizer table very interesting and drifted away, taking Tyler with them. Emma, however, planted herself firmly next to me. Emma, maybe you could, Marcus started. Nope, she said cheerfully. I'm staying. Mom says transparency is important in family relationships now. Marcus's jaw tightened. Sarah, this is awkward enough without an audience. Then maybe don't make it awkward, I suggested. He took a deep breath, clearly steeling himself for something. I wanted to apologize. For not being more upfront about the financial arrangement. And for letting Mom and Dad think I was more successful than I actually was. It was a start, I suppose. Not great, but a start. Okay, I said. He waited for more, and when it didn't come, he continued. I also wanted to ask if there was any possibility of working out some kind of transitional support. Just until I get fully back on my feet. Emma made a small noise that might have been a laugh or might have been choking on her soda. Marcus, I said carefully, what part of you are on your own now was unclear. I understand you're angry. I'm not angry anymore. I was angry 4 months ago. Now I'm just done. But I'm family. So am I. So is Emma. But somehow when you needed help, I was family. When I needed basic respect, I wasn't family enough to matter. Marcus glanced around the room, probably checking to see who was listening. Most of the party was pretending not to pay attention, but I could tell everyone was tuned into our conversation. Sarah, I've learned my lesson. I'm working now, making an honest living. Good for you. But the salary is. It's a lot less than what I was claiming before. I'm having trouble even affording a studio apartment. That sounds like a you problem. Emma was openly grinning now. My 15-year-old daughter was getting way too much entertainment out of watching her uncle squirm. Please, Marcus said, and for the first time, he sounded genuinely desperate rather than just frustrated. I'm not asking for everything like before. Just maybe help with a security deposit? First month's rent? Something to get me started? Marcus, let me ask you something. When I was struggling to afford Emma's orthodontist bills 2 years ago, did I ask you for help? You never said you were struggling, because I figured it out myself. Like adults do. Like you're going to have to do now. That's different. You have a stable job. I have a stable job because I make good decisions. You could have a stable life too if you started making good decisions. That's when Dad decided to intervene. He'd been hovering at the edge of our conversation for the past few minutes, clearly working up the courage to jump in. Sarah, honey, maybe you could consider. Dad, stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. I know what you're going to say, and the answer is no. I'm not reconsidering, I'm not compromising, and I'm not going to be guilted into resuming my role as Marcus's personal bank. But he's struggling, good. Struggling builds character. You and Mom always told me that when I was having a hard time. Dad had the grace to look uncomfortable. That was different. How? You were. You've always been more independent. More capable of handling things on your own. Emma's eyes went wide. Grandpa, did you just say that Mom is more capable than Uncle Marcus? The implications of that statement hit Dad about 2 seconds after it left his mouth. If I was more capable, why had everyone been treating Marcus like the success story? If I was more independent, why hadn't that been seen as something to be proud of? I didn't mean. Dad started, then stopped. Sarah, you know what I meant. Actually, I don't think I do. Because it sounds like you just admitted that you've always known I was more competent than Marcus, but you chose to praise him and criticize me anyway. The conversation was drawing a bigger audience now. My Aunt Linda, the one who'd made the support system comment at the wedding, was pretending to arrange flowers while obviously listening to every word. Marcus tried to salvage the situation. Sarah, this isn't about who's more capable. This is about family helping family through tough times. You mean like how the family helped me through tough times? I asked. Oh wait, that never happened. I handled my own tough times. While simultaneously handling yours. That's not fair, Marcus. In the 18 months I was supporting you, how many times did you ask how I was doing? How many times did you check if I was struggling? How many times did you even say thank you? The silence that followed was deafening. That's what I thought, I said. Mom finally decided to join the fray, approaching our little group with that determinedly cheerful expression she wore when she was about to try to smooth things over. Maybe we should all take a step back, she said. This is Mike's birthday party, and we're making everyone uncomfortable. Actually, said Mike, appearing with a fresh beer and a slightly mischievous expression, this is the most interesting birthday party I've had in years. Please, continue. Mom shot him a disapproving look. Michael. What? Mom always said honesty was the best policy. Sarah's just being honest. There's honest and then there's hurtful, Mom said. You're right, I agreed. Like when you honestly told a room full of wedding guests that Marcus finally made you proud, unlike some others. That was definitely hurtful. Mom's cheery facade cracked a little. Sarah, I apologized for that. No, you said you were sorry if you hurt my feelings. That's not the same as apologizing for saying something cruel. I wasn't being cruel. I was just proud of Marcus's achievements. Achievements I paid for. We've been over this, have we? Because I don't think we have. I think we've talked around it, but we've never actually addressed the core issue. Emma was taking mental notes again, probably planning to recount this entire conversation to her friends later. I could see her texting someone under the table. What core issue? Mom asked. That you treated me like a family failure while I was literally funding the family success story. And now that the truth is out, instead of acknowledging how wrong that was, you're trying to guilt me into going back to the same arrangement. Nobody's asking you to go back to the same arrangement, Dad said. Really? Because Marcus just asked me to help with rent. That sounds pretty familiar. Uncle Dave had materialized somewhere during this conversation, probably drawn by the smell of drama in the air. Maybe, he said in his most diplomatic voice, everyone could benefit from a little family therapy. Work through these issues in a professional setting. I had to laugh. Uncle Dave, did you just suggest that I need therapy to learn how to accept being financially exploited by my family? That's not what I meant, because that's what it sounded like. Like the problem isn't that my family treated me poorly, but that I'm not handling being treated poorly with enough grace. Dave backpedaled quickly. I just think it might help everyone communicate better. I'm communicating fine. I said no. That's very clear communication. Emma looked up from her phone. Mom, Ashley wants to know if she can come to the next family gathering. She says this is better than reality TV. Emma, I said, but I was fighting a smile again. Sorry, but she's not wrong. This is definitely more entertaining than Uncle Marcus's old stories about his business success. Marcus flinched at that, and I felt a tiny pang of something that might have been guilt. But then I remembered the 18 months of payments, the condescending comments, the complete lack of gratitude, and the feeling passed. Sarah, Mom tried again, what would it take for you to consider helping Marcus one more time? Just to get him settled? Mom, let me make this really simple for you. There is nothing, that would make me reconsider. This isn't a negotiation. This isn't a temporary position. This is a permanent change in how I handle my relationship with Marcus. But what if he pays you back? Dad asked. What if we set up a formal repayment plan? Dad, he's never repaid a single dollar of the $47,000 I already gave him. What makes you think he'd repay anything new? Because now he understands. He understands that his gravy train dried up. That's not the same as understanding why what he did was wrong. Marcus finally spoke up again. Sarah, I do understand why you're upset. And I am grateful for everything you did. I didn't realize how much it was affecting you. Because you never asked. I know. I should have asked. I should have been more aware. Marcus, do you know what my mortgage payment is? He blinked, clearly thrown by the question. No. Do you know what I pay for car insurance? Health insurance? Emma's school expenses? No. Do you know if I have student loans? Credit card debt? Medical bills? No. Do you know anything about my financial situation beyond the fact that I apparently had enough money to cover all your expenses? No. And in 18 months of me paying your bills, it never occurred to you to find out if I could actually afford to be doing that? The silence stretched out again. Marcus was staring at his shoes, probably realizing for the first time just how self-centered his approach had been. I guess I assumed, he said quietly, that you wouldn't offer to help if you couldn't afford it. I never offered, Marcus. You asked, and I said yes because I thought I was helping my brother build something meaningful. I thought it was temporary. I thought you'd be grateful. I thought a lot of things that turned out to be wrong. Emma looked up from her phone again. Uncle Marcus, did you ever even say thank you? Marcus looked stricken. Of course I did. When? When Sarah first started helping, I thanked her then. That was 1.5 years ago, Emma pointed out. What about all the times after that? Marcus didn't have an answer for that. Jennifer rejoined our group, probably sensing that the drama was reaching its peak. You know, she said conversationally, Mike and I were talking about this earlier. We calculated that if Sarah had been investing that $47,000 instead of giving it to Marcus, she'd probably have close to $60,000 by now, given the market performance over the past 18 months. Jennifer, Mike said, that's not helping. No, it's fine, I said. She's right. I could have been building wealth for my own family instead of subsidizing Marcus's lifestyle. Emma could have had a college fund. I could have paid off my own house early. You could have taken that Europe trip years ago, Emma added helpfully. Emma and I could have taken multiple trips, actually. Mom was looking increasingly uncomfortable. Sarah, dwelling on what might have been isn't productive. You're right. That's why I'm focusing on what's going to be instead. And what's going to be is me making financial decisions based on what's best for my actual family, Emma and me, instead of what's most convenient for my extended family. We're your actual family too, Dad protested. Then act like it. The party had basically ground to a halt at this point. Everyone was either openly listening to our conversation or pretending very badly to be doing something else. Mike cleared his throat. So, should we do the cake now? Excellent idea, Mom said, clearly desperate to change the subject. But Marcus wasn't done yet. Sarah, wait, he said as people started moving toward the kitchen. Just give me a chance to prove that I've changed. Let me show you that I can be responsible. Marcus, you've had 6 months to show me that. You could have gotten a job immediately after I cut you off. You could have sold the house yourself instead of waiting for foreclosure. You could have downsized your lifestyle proactively instead of reactively. You've had plenty of chances to prove you've changed. But I did get a job. After you had no other choice. That's not the same as making responsible decisions. What do you want from me? He asked, and for the first time, he sounded genuinely frustrated rather than just desperate. I can't change the past. I can't go back and handle things differently. All I can do is try to do better going forward. And that's great, Marcus. I hope you do better going forward. But doing better going forward doesn't entitle you to continued financial support from me. So that's it? You're just writing me off completely? I'm not writing you off. I'm treating you like an adult who's responsible for his own choices and their consequences. Emma was watching this exchange with the fascination of someone witnessing a particularly dramatic episode of their favorite show. Uncle Marcus, she said, can I ask you something? Marcus nodded, probably hoping for support from the younger generation. If Mom had asked you to help pay my school expenses or our mortgage while you were supposedly successful, would you have said yes? Marcus hesitated just long enough for the answer to be obvious. That's different, he said finally. Sarah never asked for help. Because she didn't need help, Emma pointed out. She was handling her own responsibilities like an adult. But hypothetically, if she had asked, would you have helped? I would have tried to help. With what money? The money Mom was giving you? Marcus's face went red. Emma, that's not fair. Neither was taking money from my mom for 18 months without ever asking if we needed help with anything. I put my hand on Emma's shoulder. Okay, sweetheart, I think you've made your point. I'm just saying, Emma continued, if Uncle Marcus was really family helping family, he would have been thinking about our family too, not just his own stuff. Out of the mouths of babes. Mom tried one last time to salvage the situation. Sarah, I understand you're hurt. And I understand why you made the decision you made. But cutting Marcus off completely feels harsh. Mom, I'm not cutting him off completely. I'm cutting off the financial support. He's still welcome at family gatherings. I'll still be polite to him. I'll still care about his well-being. I just won't be paying for his well-being anymore. But what if he really can't manage on his own? Then he'll figure out how to manage, or he'll face the consequences of not managing. Just like everyone else in the world. Dad shook his head. I don't understand how you can be so cold about this. Dad, I was warm about it for 18 months. I was understanding and supportive and generous and patient. And where did that get me? It got me treated like the family disappointment while I was literally keeping the family golden boy afloat. We never meant to make you feel like a disappointment, but you did. Repeatedly. At every family gathering for 2 years. The cake ceremony was awkward, to say the least. Everyone sang happy birthday to Mike with a kind of forced enthusiasm usually reserved for office parties. Marcus stood on the opposite side of the room from Emma and me, looking like someone had kicked his dog. As we were getting ready to leave, Jennifer pulled me aside. Sarah, I just wanted to say that what you did took guts. And I think it was the right thing to do. Thanks, Jen. That actually means a lot. Mike and I have been talking about the family dynamics for years. The way Marcus got treated like the golden child while you got taken for granted. It wasn't right. I'm just glad somebody noticed. Oh, we all noticed. We just didn't say anything because it wasn't our place. But watching you finally stand up for yourself? It was about time. Emma and I drove home in comfortable silence for the first few miles. So, she said finally, how do you feel about that? Honestly? Exhausted. But also relieved, I think. Uncle Marcus looked like he was going to cry. He might have been. Realizing that your actions have consequences can be pretty overwhelming when you've never had to face consequences before. Do you think he'll actually change? I don't know. Maybe. But that's not my problem anymore. Good, Emma said firmly. You deserve a family that appreciates you. I have a family that appreciates me, I said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. You. Well, yeah. But it would be nice if the rest of them figured it out too. Maybe they will, someday. Maybe Marcus will learn to stand on his own and become the person everyone thought he already was. Maybe Mom and Dad will realize that treating their children differently based on perceived success isn't actually good parenting. Maybe Uncle Dave will stop borrowing money from people and conveniently forgetting about it. Or maybe none of that will happen, and I'll just have to accept that my family is who they are, not who I wish they were. Either way, I'll be fine. Better than fine, actually. I'll be free. And sometimes, freedom is worth more than family harmony. At least villains get respect.
Story 5. My high school bully laughed and said, I heard you never finished college. Still working retail? Her friends giggled. I didn't get defensive. I simply nodded and said, you're right, I dropped out, to run the company where your husband is an employee. And I'm giving him a special letter today. Her smile vanished. It started 3 months ago at the Westfield Mall. I was there for a routine inspection. My company owns the building, and I like to walk through personally every quarter. Nothing fancy, just checking that our property management team is keeping standards up. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was wearing jeans and a polo shirt, looking exactly like I might work retail. That's when I heard it. That laugh. You know the one, high-pitched, designed to cut through a crowd and make everyone look. I'd heard it echoing through Hamilton High's hallways for 4 miserable years, usually right before something humiliating happened to me. My stomach dropped before I even turned around. Oh my goodness, is that Marcus Webb? Brittany Chen. Still blonde, still perfect, still radiating that particular brand of confidence that comes from never having faced real consequences. She was standing outside Victoria's Secret with 2 other women I vaguely recognized from our graduating class, all of them holding shopping bags and looking like they'd stepped out of a suburban lifestyle magazine. I could have kept walking. Should have, maybe. But sometimes the teenage version of yourself grabs the wheel, and before you know it, you're facing down your past in the middle of a shopping mall on a Tuesday afternoon. Brittany. I nodded, keeping my voice neutral. How are you? I'm amazing. She practically bounced as she said it. Married to David Chen, you remember David from the basketball team? We have the most gorgeous house in Maple Heights, and I just finished my yoga instructor certification. Life is just perfect. Her friends flanked her like bodyguards, both smiling those sharp, assessing smiles that women deploy when they sense blood in the water. I recognize them now, Sarah Martinez and Amy Thompson, Brittany's devoted followers who'd spent high school perfecting the art of laughing at exactly the right moments. That's great, I said, and meant it. I'd learned a long time ago that holding grudges is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Really happy for you. But Brittany wasn't done. She never was. And what about you? Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, taking in my casual clothes, my lack of obvious wealth markers. I heard you never finished college. Still working retail? Sarah and Amy giggled on cue, the sound hitting me like a tuning fork struck against bone. For a split second, I was 17 again, standing in the cafeteria while Brittany announced to half the school that I'd asked her to prom through a note, and wasn't that just the saddest thing she'd ever seen? The old Marcus would have stammered out an explanation. Would have gotten defensive, maybe lied about his circumstances. But I'm not that kid anymore, and sometimes the truth is the sharpest weapon you can wield. You're right, I said simply. I dropped out, to run the company where your husband is an employee. And I'm giving him a special letter today. The change in her expression was immediate and beautiful. The smug confidence cracked like ice under pressure, revealing something raw and startled underneath. Her mouth opened slightly, closed, then opened again. What company? She managed. Webb Industries. We own this mall, actually. along with about 30 other commercial properties in the tri-state area. I kept my tone conversational, like we were discussing the weather. David works in our accounting department. Has for about 2 years now. Sarah and Amy had gone quiet, their predatory smiles fading as they realized the dynamic had shifted in ways they didn't understand. Brittany looked like she'd been slapped. That's impossible, she whispered. Is it? I pulled out my phone, swiped to the company directory, and showed her David's employee profile. His photo smiled back at us from the screen, along with his job title, Junior Financial Analyst, Level 2. He's actually up for review this week. Hence the letter. The silence stretched between us like a held breath. I could see Brittany's mind racing, trying to reconcile the narrative she'd built about her life with this new information. In her story, she was the queen and I was the court jester who'd never learned to stop stumbling over my own feet. This wasn't supposed to happen. What kind of letter? She asked, and I heard something new in her voice. Fear, maybe. Or recognition that she'd just stepped on a landmine. I smiled then, and I hope it looked kinder than it felt. The good kind. David's getting a promotion. Relief flooded her face so quickly it was almost comical. Oh. That's wonderful. David will be so excited. He's been working so hard, and I always tell him. Of course, I continued, the promotion comes with a transfer to our Portland office. Full relocation package, though. Moving expenses, housing allowance, the works. Company really takes care of its people when they're willing to embrace new opportunities. The relief died. Portland? Beautiful city. Great for young families looking to establish themselves. I glanced at my watch, a Rolex Submariner that had been a gift to myself when we'd closed our first major acquisition. Speaking of which, I should probably head up to the office. David's expecting me at 3. I started to walk away, then turned back as if remembering something casual. Oh, and Brittany? The promotion isn't optional. Portland office needs him next month. I gave her that same neutral smile. But like I said, company takes care of its people. David's a good employee. He'll do well there. I left them standing there and walked toward the elevator that would take me to the top floor, where Web Industries maintained its regional office. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my hands were steady as I pressed the call button. The truth was, David Chen really was getting a promotion. I'd signed off on it that morning, along with the transfer to Portland. What I hadn't mentioned to Brittany was that David had specifically requested the transfer 6 months ago. Apparently, he and Brittany had been having problems significant enough that he wanted to put 3,000 miles between them. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, watching the mall floor disappear below me. Through the glass, I could see Brittany and her friends huddled together, their body language screaming crisis management. Phones were already coming out. I pulled out my own phone and scrolled to David's number. We'd talked a few times during the promotion process. He was smart, hardworking, and surprisingly candid about his personal life. More candid than he probably should have been with his boss, but I'd gotten the impression he needed someone to talk to. David? It's Marcus Webb. Quick question, when were you planning to tell Brittany about Portland? Mr. Webb? His voice was tight with stress. Actually, I was hoping to discuss that with you. The timing is complicated. Is it because she doesn't know you applied for the transfer? A long pause. How did you? Never mind. Yes, sir. That's part of it. Well, she knows now. Just ran into her at the mall. Small world. Another pause, longer this time. What exactly did you tell her? The truth. That you're getting promoted and transferred to Portland. That it's not optional. I stepped off the elevator into the Web Industries lobby, where our receptionist gave me a small wave. I may have let her think the company was making the decision without your input. Mr. Webb, David, can I ask you something personal? Yes, sir? Are you happy? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, quietly, no, sir. I'm not. Well, Portland's nice this time of year. Clean slate, new opportunities. Sometimes that's exactly what a person needs. Yes, sir. It is. Good man. Oh, and David? Take the rest of the day off. I imagine you'll have some things to discuss at home. I hung up and made my way to my office, where the real work was waiting. Contracts to review, quarterly reports to analyze, a conference call with investors in an hour. The encounter with Brittany already felt distant, like something that had happened to someone else. But as I settled into my chair and opened my laptop, I couldn't shake the image of her face when I'd mentioned the letter. The way her whole world had shifted on its axis in the space of a heartbeat. My assistant knocked and entered with a stack of documents that needed my signature. Everything okay, Mr. Webb? You look a little preoccupied. Just a blast from the past, I said, accepting the papers. Amazing how small the world can be. She smiled and left me to my work, but my mind kept drifting back to that moment in the mall. To the look in Brittany's eyes when she realized that the boy she'd tormented for 4 years had grown up to be someone she couldn't dismiss. Here's the thing about bullies, they operate on the assumption that power structures never change. That the people they step on will always be beneath them, available for stepping on whenever the mood strikes. They never consider that their victims might grow, might thrive. I signed the contracts, one by one, thinking about David Chen and his quiet desperation to escape a life that looked perfect from the outside. Thinking about Brittany and her carefully constructed world, built on a foundation of other people's diminishment. Thinking about the strange mathematics of justice, where sometimes life presents you exactly the tools you need to balance an old equation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Brittany. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations weren't worth having. Some people had already said everything they ever needed to say to you, years ago in high school hallways and cafeterias, when they thought the world would always be arranged in their favor. The conference call went well. Our Q3 numbers were strong, and the investors were pleased with our expansion plans. During a break in the discussion, I found myself looking out the window at the mall floor below, where afternoon shoppers moved through the corridors like pieces on a vast game board. That's when I saw her again. Brittany was sitting alone on one of the benches near the fountain, her shopping bags at her feet, her phone pressed to her ear. Even from 5 floors up, her body language screamed distress. Her free hand gestured frantically as she spoke, and I could almost hear the desperation in her voice. I watched her for a few minutes, feeling something I hadn't expected: pity. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just sadness for a person whose entire identity had been built on being better than other people, and who was now discovering how precarious that foundation really was. The call resumed, and I turned back to the screen, where my business partners were discussing market projections and growth strategies. Important things. Real things. Things that mattered in the world we'd all agreed to live in. But part of my attention stayed on that window, and on the woman sitting alone by the fountain, learning in real time that life doesn't care about your high school social hierarchy. After the call ended, I spent another hour reviewing documents and answering emails. Standard Tuesday afternoon stuff. But I kept thinking about David Chen, and about the conversation he was probably having with his wife right about now. About decisions and consequences, about the weight of secrets, about the way life has a forcing your hand when you least expect it. At 5:30, I packed up my things and headed for the elevator. The mall was busy with after-work shoppers and teenagers hanging out after school. Normal life, proceeding normally, full of people who had no idea that small dramas were playing out all around them. The bench by the fountain was empty now. Brittany was gone, along with her shopping bags and her carefully constructed afternoon. I wondered where she was now, what story she was telling herself about what had happened, how she was planning to salvage the narrative she'd built about her perfect life. I pushed through the main entrance into the parking lot, where my car waited under the late afternoon sun. A silver BMW, nothing too flashy, but nice enough to make the point that needed making. I'd bought it used 3 years ago, right after our first major acquisition, because I'd wanted something that felt like success without screaming about it. As I unlocked the door, I heard footsteps behind me. Quick, determined steps that suggested someone with purpose. I turned around, already knowing who I'd see. Brittany stood about 10 feet away, her perfect composure finally showing cracks. Her hair was still immaculate, her makeup still flawless, but something fundamental had shifted in her bearing. She looked smaller somehow, less certain of her place in the world. "Marcus," she said, and her voice was different now. Stripped of its casual cruelty, it sounded almost human. "Please. Can we talk?" I studied her face, looking for signs of the girl who'd made my teenage years a systematic campaign of humiliation. She was still there, underneath the adult polish, but she was scared now. Vulnerable in a way she'd never allowed herself to be when we were 17. "What would you like to talk about?" I asked. "David. The transfer. This whole situation." She took a step closer, her hands clasped in front of her like a penitent. "There has to be something we can work out. Some way to what? To keep him here. In this office. This city." Her voice was getting smaller with each word. "We have a life here, Marcus. A good life. We can't just start over in Portland. I have commitments. My yoga classes, my friends, your whole what?" I asked gently. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. For the first time in 25 years, Brittany Chen was speechless. "The thing is," I continued, "David specifically requested this transfer. 6 months ago. He told me he needed a fresh start, away from complications." His word, not mine. Her face went white. "That's impossible. David loves it here." Does he? The question hung between us like a challenge. I could see her mind working, trying to reconcile what she believed about her marriage with what I was telling her. Trying to maintain the story she'd been telling herself about her perfect life. "He would have told me," she whispered, but there was no conviction in it. Would he? I clicked the key fob, and my car chirped to life. Brittany, I'm going to give you some free advice. Not because I owe you anything, but because I've learned some things about life since high school. She nodded, waiting. People aren't props in your story. They're not there to make you look good or feel important. They're human beings with their own wants and needs and dreams, and sometimes those dreams don't include you. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears now, and I felt that unwelcome stab of pity again. David is a good man, I continued. He works hard, he's honest, and he deserves to be happy. If he thinks Portland will make him happy, then Portland is where he's going. With or without you. But you what? Love him? Then support his decision. Want him to be happy? Then let him go where he thinks he can find happiness. Or is this really about what other people will think when your perfect life turns out to be not so perfect after all? She flinched like I'd struck her, and I realized I'd hit the target dead center. This wasn't about love or marriage or even Portland. This was about Brittany's image, her carefully constructed persona as the woman who'd won at life. You think I'm a terrible person, she said quietly. I think you're a person who's never had to consider anyone else's feelings, I replied. But that doesn't make you terrible. Just limited. I opened my car door, then paused. For what it's worth, Brittany, I hope you figure it out. I hope you find a way to be happy that doesn't require other people to be unhappy. That would be good for everyone. I got in the car and started the engine, watching her in my rearview mirror as I pulled out of the parking space. She was still standing there, looking lost and small and human in a way that made my chest tight with emotions I didn't want to examine too closely. The drive home gave me time to think, and by the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd made a decision. I lived in a modest house in an older neighborhood, nothing fancy, but comfortable and private. The kind of place where you could think clearly, away from the noise and performance of public life. I'd bought it 3 years ago with cash, another symbol of success that felt more real than any luxury car or designer watch. Inside, I poured myself a glass of water and sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop. I had David Chen's personal email address, and there were some things that needed to be said. David, I hope today's conversation with Brittany went as well as these things can go. I know this situation is complicated, and I don't want to make it more so. That said, I think you should know that your transfer to Portland was approved because of your excellent work and your specific request, not because of any personal agenda on my part. Your marital situation is your business, and the company has no interest in interfering with your personal life. If you decide you want to stay in this office after all, we can discuss other options. The promotion and raise will stand either way. Good work deserves recognition regardless of geography. Take care of yourself, and let me know what you decide. Best regards, Marcus Webb. I read it over twice, then sent it. David deserved to know that his choices were his own, that he wasn't being manipulated by someone with an agenda. Whatever he decided about Portland, about Brittany, about his life, it needed to be his decision, made for his reasons. My phone rang an hour later. David's number. Mr. Webb? I got your email. Thank you. That was unexpectedly kind. Just being clear about the situation, I said. How did things go at home? A long pause. About as well as you'd expect. Brittany is processing. She had some interesting theories about your motivations. I bet she did. She thinks you're trying to destroy her marriage as revenge for high school. I laughed, surprised by how absurd it sounded when said out loud. Is that what you think? No, sir. I think you're giving me an opportunity I asked for, and Brittany is having trouble accepting that her version of reality might not be the only version. Smart man. So what are you going to do? Another pause, shorter this time. I'm going to Portland, Mr. Webb. With or without her. I've been trying to save a marriage that ended years ago, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? The question caught me off guard with its directness. Yes, actually. I am. Divorce is hard, even when it's necessary. And despite everything, I don't wish unhappiness on Brittany. You're a better man than I am, then. Because I'm pretty sure she's wished unhappiness on you plenty of times over the years. Probably. But that's her burden to carry, not mine. We talked for a few more minutes about logistics and timelines, about the practical details of relocating a life across the country. David sounded lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The weight of pretending, maybe. The exhaustion that comes from trying to hold together something that's fundamentally broken. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen as the evening light faded outside my windows, thinking about the strange circularity of life. About how the boy who'd been tormented in high school hallways had grown up to hold the key to his tormentor's husband's future. About how power shifts and changes, how justice sometimes wears unexpected faces. But mostly I thought about Brittany, standing alone in that parking lot, confronting for the first time the possibility that her story about herself might be wrong. That the people she'd dismissed and diminished had continued living and growing and becoming themselves in ways she'd never bothered to imagine. The next morning brought emails, phone calls, meetings, the usual rhythm of business life. But around lunchtime, my assistant buzzed my office. "Mr. Webb? There's a Brittany Chen here to see you. She says it's personal." I stared at the intercom for a moment, considering. "Send her in." Brittany looked different in the harsh fluorescent light of my office. Smaller, somehow. Less polished. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger and more vulnerable than the woman I'd encountered at the mall. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "I wasn't sure you would. What can I do for you?" She took a deep breath, gathering herself. "I talked to David last night. About Portland, about the transfer, about everything. I'm sorry it was difficult. Are you?" She looked at me directly, her eyes searching my face. "Or are you enjoying this? The whole situation?" It was a fair question, and it deserved an honest answer. 6 months ago, I would have said yes. The idea of you getting a taste of how it feels to be powerless? That would have felt like justice. And now? Now I just feel tired. Tired of carrying around anger about things that happened when we were kids. Tired of the whole cycle of hurt and revenge and more hurt. She nodded slowly. "David is leaving me. I'm sorry. He said he's been unhappy for years. That he felt like he was living someone else's life, trying to be someone else's version of perfect." Her voice was steady, but I could hear the effort it was taking to maintain control. "He said the Portland transfer was just an excuse to finally leave. What will you do?" "I don't know," she laughed, but there was no humor in it. "For the first time in my life, I honestly don't know what comes next. Everything I thought I wanted, everything I thought was important. It's all just gone." She was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. "I owe you an apology," she said finally. "For high school. For the way I treated you. For thinking that making other people feel small somehow made me bigger." "Brittany, no, let me finish. Please." She looked up at me, and her eyes were bright with tears she was trying not to shed. "I was cruel to you. Deliberately, systematically cruel. And I told myself it was just how things were, that it didn't really matter because we were just kids playing stupid kid games. We were kids. We were. But kids grow up to be adults, and the things we do to each other matter. They shape who we become, how we see ourselves, how we treat other people." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I spent 25 years believing that cruelty was just part of how the world worked. That there were people who mattered and people who didn't, and my job was to make sure I stayed on the right side of that line. And now? Now I'm learning what it feels like to be on the other side. To be the one who doesn't matter, whose feelings don't count, whose life can be turned upside down by someone else's decisions." She managed a weak smile. "It's not fun." "No," I agreed. "It's not." We sat in silence for a while, two adults trying to make sense of the children they'd been and the choices that had led them to this moment. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Sure. When you saw me at the mall yesterday, when you realized who I was this whole thing planned? The timing, the way you handled it?" I considered lying, giving her the simple answer she might have preferred. But she'd been honest with me, and she deserved honesty in return. "No," I said. "Running into you was pure coincidence. But when you started in with the same old routine, the same casual cruelty, I decided not to protect you from the truth this time." "The truth?" "That your husband has been miserable for years. That he's been planning to leave you for months. That your perfect life was never as perfect as you thought it was." I leaned back in my chair. "I could have kept that to myself. Let you find out some other way, some other time. But I didn't." "Why?" "Because 17-year-old Marcus never got to fight back. Never got to show you that your words had consequences, that there was a real person on the receiving end of your casual cruelty." I shrugged. Maybe that was petty. But it was also true. She nodded slowly. "I deserved it. Maybe. But that doesn't mean I feel good about it." "No?" "No. Because hurting you didn't fix anything. It didn't change the past, didn't heal old wounds, didn't make me feel like a better person. It just created more hurt in the world, and there's already plenty of that to go around." Brittany was quiet for a long time, processing this. Finally, she stood up. "Thank you," she said. "For being honest. For not pretending this was all some cosmic coincidence with no human agency involved. What will you do now?" "I don't know. Figure out who I am when I'm not half of a couple, I guess. Learn how to be alone with myself." She paused at the door. "Maybe try to become the kind of person who makes the world a little kinder instead of a little crueler." That sounds like a good start. "Marcus?" "Yeah?" "For what it's worth, I'm glad you didn't stay that scared kid from high school. The world needs more people who refuse to let cruelty win." She left, and I sat alone in my office, staring at the space where she'd been. Outside, the city continued its daily rhythm, millions of people living their lives, making their choices, trying to figure out how to be human in a world that didn't come with an instruction manual. I thought about David Chen, probably packing boxes in preparation for his new life in Portland. About Brittany, facing the collapse of everything she'd thought she wanted. About the strange mathematics of justice and forgiveness, about how sometimes the most profound changes happen not through grand gestures but through small moments of honesty. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Thank you for everything. Portland, here I come." I smiled and typed back, "Good luck. You've got this." Because sometimes that's all any of us can do, support each other's choices, even when they're hard. Even when they hurt. Even when they force us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the lives we've built. The afternoon passed quietly, filled with the usual business of running a company. But as I worked, I found myself thinking about second chances and new beginnings, about the possibility of becoming better versions of ourselves even when, especially when, our old selves have left damage in their wake. At 6 o'clock, I packed up my things and headed home, leaving behind another day in a life that had turned out very different from what anyone might have predicted back in high school. Different, but maybe better. Maybe kinder. Maybe that's the real victory, not proving you're better than your enemies, but learning to be better than your own worst impulses. Learning to choose kindness even when cruelty would feel more satisfying. Even when life hands you the perfect opportunity for revenge, and you discover that what you really want isn't vengeance at all. Just peace. Just the chance to move forward without carrying the weight of old anger. Just the possibility that tomorrow might be a little bit better than today, for everyone involved. As I drove home through the evening traffic, I realized that Brittany had given me something I hadn't expected: closure. Not the dramatic, satisfying kind you see in movies, but the real kind. The messy, complicated, ultimately human kind that doesn't solve everything but makes it possible to finally let go. But the story doesn't end there. It never really does it? 3 weeks later, I got a call that changed everything again. "Mr. Webb? This is Detective Sarah Morrison with the Metro Police. I'm calling about David Chen. He's listed you as his emergency contact." My blood went cold. "What happened? Is he okay?" "He's in the hospital, sir. Serious car accident on I-84, about 2 hours outside Portland. He was driving alone, late at night. Vehicle went off the road, rolled several times. I was already reaching for my car keys." "Which hospital?" "Oregon Health and Science University. He's in surgery now, but..." "Sir, you should know. It's touch and go." The drive to Portland took 6 hours. 6 hours of coffee, gas stations, and the kind of desperate internal bargaining you do when someone's life hangs in the balance. David had become more than an employee over the past months, he'd become something like a friend. One of the few people who'd seen past the successful businessman facade to the person underneath. I called Brittany from the road. She deserved to know. "Marcus?" Her voice was small, confused. It was past midnight. "Brittany, it's about David. There's been an accident." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, quietly, "How bad?" "Bad. I'm driving to Portland now. I thought you should know." "Is he going to?" She couldn't finish the question. "I don't know. They said it's serious." Another long pause. "I'm coming too." "Brittany, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Whatever happened between us, whatever mistakes I made. He's still my husband. I'm coming." She met me in the hospital parking lot at dawn, looking like she'd thrown on whatever clothes were closest and driven through the night without stopping. Her hair was a mess, her eyes were red from crying, and she looked more real than I'd ever seen her. "Any word?" she asked as we walked toward the entrance. "Still in surgery. Has been for 8 hours." The waiting room was that particular shade of institutional beige that hospitals seem to favor, designed to be calming but somehow managing to be deeply depressing instead. We sat in adjacent chairs, two people who'd been enemies, then strangers, now united by concern for someone we both cared about in different ways. "I keep thinking about the last conversation we had," Brittany said after an hour of silence. "It was a fight. About the house, about money, about whose fault everything was. I said terrible things. He knew you were hurting." "Did he?" "Because I'm not sure I ever told him that. I spent so much time being angry at him for wanting to leave that I never stopped to ask why he wanted to leave in the first place." A doctor appeared in scrubs, looking tired but not devastated. "That was something." "Family of David Chen?" We both stood. "How is he?" "Stable. Critical, but stable. The surgery went well, we were able to repair the internal bleeding and set the broken ribs. He's got a long recovery ahead of him, but he's going to make it." The relief hit me like a physical force. Brittany actually swayed on her feet, and I found myself steadying her with a hand on her arm. "Can we see him?" she asked. One at a time, and only briefly. He's unconscious, but sometimes they can hear voices. Brittany looked at me. You should go first. You're the one who, she stopped, shook her head. You should go first. David looked smaller in the hospital bed, connected to machines that beeped and hummed with electronic life. His face was bruised, his left arm in a cast, but he was breathing on his own. That was something. I sat in the visitor's chair and did something I hadn't done in years. I prayed. Not to anyone in particular, asking for one more chance for a good man who'd been trying to rebuild his life. Hey, David, I said quietly. It's Marcus. You're going to be okay, but you gave us all a pretty good scare. Brittany's here too. She drove all night to get here. His eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. Take your time healing up. The Portland office can wait. Your job will be there when you're ready. I paused, not sure what else to say to an unconscious man. And David? Whatever you decide about everything else. Just focus on getting better first. Everything else can wait. When I came back to the waiting room, Brittany was pacing by the windows, staring out at the city skyline. He looks peaceful, I told her. Banged up, but peaceful. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Can I? Of course. She was gone for 20 minutes. When she returned, her eyes were red but her face was calmer. I told him I was sorry, she said. For everything. For not listening, for not seeing who he really was, for trying to force him to be someone he wasn't. She sat down heavily. I don't know if he heard me. He heard you. We spent the next 3 days taking shifts at the hospital. Brittany would sit with David in the mornings while I handled business calls from the hotel. I'd take the afternoon shift while she tried to get some rest. Evenings, we'd both be there, maintaining a strange kind of vigil that felt more like penance than duty. It was during one of those evening shifts that David finally woke up. Water, he croaked, his voice barely audible. Brittany was on her feet instantly, helping him with ice chips while I called for the nurse. His eyes were clear, focused. The relief was overwhelming. You scared us, Brittany said, and her voice was thick with emotion. David looked from her to me, confusion clouding his features. Both of you? Here? Surprise, I said dryly. Turns out we both care about what happens to you. He managed a weak smile. How long? 3 days, Brittany answered. You've been out for 3 days. The accident, I remember leaving the office late, and then. He shook his head. Nothing. Doesn't matter, I said. What matters is you're okay. David's recovery was slow but steady. The doctors said he'd been incredibly lucky, a few inches in any direction and the outcome could have been very different. As he got stronger, conversations became longer, more complex. I need to tell you something, he said to me during one afternoon visit. Brittany had gone to get coffee, leaving us alone. The accident. I don't think it was really an accident. My blood chilled. What do you mean? I was thinking about Brittany. About the divorce, about leaving everything behind, about starting over again. And I got tired. Tired of running, tired of pretending, tired of trying to fix things that might not be fixable. He stared at the ceiling. When I saw that curve coming up, and I felt the car start to drift. I didn't fight it as hard as I should have. David, I'm not saying I tried to hurt myself. But I'm not saying I tried very hard to avoid getting hurt, either. He looked at me directly. That makes sense? It made terrible sense. The kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from carrying too much pain for too long, until even self-preservation feels like too much effort. What about now? I asked. Now? Now I want to get better. Seeing Brittany here, seeing how scared she was. It reminded me that people care. That even when everything feels broken, there are still connections worth preserving. Even with Brittany? I don't know. Maybe not as husband and wife, but she's been here every day, Marcus. Reading to me, bringing me books, arguing with the nurses about my medication schedule. He smiled slightly. I'd forgotten that version of her existed. When Brittany returned with coffee, David was asleep again. I pulled her aside. He told me something. About the accident. I explained what David had shared, watching her face go through a series of emotions, shock, guilt, understanding, and finally a kind of fierce determination. He can't go back to that apartment alone, she said. Not in this condition, not with everything that's been happening. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting he comes home. Not permanently, not to fix our marriage or pretend everything is fine. But just to heal. To have someone who cares about him make sure he takes his medication and eats real food and doesn't spend too much time alone with his thoughts. You think that's wise? I think it's necessary. She met my eyes. I failed him as a wife. I'm not going to fail him as a human being. It took some convincing, but David eventually agreed to return to their house in Maple Heights for his recovery. The arrangement was temporary, practical, focused on healing rather than reconciliation. Separate bedrooms, clear boundaries, but also companionship and care. I flew back home after making sure David was settled, but we stayed in touch. Daily phone calls at first, then emails, then just the occasional check-in as his strength returned. The updates were surprisingly positive. Brittany had thrown herself into caregiving with the same intensity she'd once brought to her yoga classes and social obligations. She researched nutrition for bone healing, learned about physical therapy exercises, even convinced David's doctor to make house calls when transportation was difficult. More importantly, they were talking. Really talking, maybe for the first time in years. She told me she's been seeing a therapist, David reported during one of our calls. Trying to understand why she spent so many years needing to feel superior to other people. It's not easy work. How are you doing with all of it? Better than I expected. We're not getting back together, that ship has sailed. But we're remembering why we became friends in the first place, before everything got complicated. 6 months later, David was cleared to return to work. He chose to stay in the local office rather than transfer to Portland, which surprised everyone including himself. Portland was about running away, he explained when I asked. But I'm done running. I want to face things here, deal with the mess I helped create, and build something better from the pieces. The divorce proceeded amicably. They sold the house in Maple Heights and used the proceeds to buy smaller places. David found a condo downtown. Brittany rented an apartment closer to the yoga studio where she'd started teaching full-time. It's strange, Brittany told me during one of our increasingly frequent coffee meetings. For the first time in my adult life, I'm not defined by who I'm married to or what neighborhood I live in or what other people think of my choices. It's terrifying and liberating at the same time. What's next? I'm thinking about going back to school. Social work, maybe. Or counseling. Something where I can help people instead of just existing in my own little bubble. She'd changed in ways that went deeper than haircuts or wardrobe choices. The sharp edges that had defined her personality had been worn smooth by experience, replaced by something more genuine. More vulnerable. Can I ask you something? She said one afternoon as we sat in a coffee shop near the office. Sure. Do you think people can really change? Not just their circumstances or their habits, but their fundamental nature? I considered the question, thinking about the journey we'd all taken from that afternoon in the mall to this moment. I think people can choose to become better versions of themselves, I said finally. But it requires admitting that the previous version wasn't working. That's the hard part. Yeah, she said quietly. It is. We sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd started as enemies and somehow ended up as something like friends. Not close friends, too much history for that, but people who understood each other in ways that mattered. I have something for you, Brittany said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a small envelope, worn around the edges like it had been carried for a while. Inside was a note, written in careful handwriting on expensive stationery. Marcus, I know this doesn't fix anything, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. But I wanted you to have this, proof that someone learned something from the mess we all made. I've been volunteering at a local high school, working with kids who are struggling socially. Helping them understand that the hierarchies that seem so important now won't matter in 5 years, that the people who are cruel to them are usually just scared kids acting out their own pain. One girl told me yesterday that I probably saved her life. She'd been planning to hurt herself because the bullying had gotten so bad. Instead, she's learning to see her tormentors as broken people who need help, not enemies who need to be defeated. I thought you should know that the ripples from our story are spreading in ways we never expected. That sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the foundation for the best things we ever do. Thank you for showing me that life doesn't owe anyone anything, but we owe each other kindness anyway. B. I read the note twice, feeling something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, that had happened months ago. Something deeper. Recognition, maybe. The acknowledgement that we're all just imperfect people trying to figure out how to be human together. You didn't have to give me this, I said. Yes, I did. You changed my life, Marcus. Not in the way you probably intended, but in the way I needed. How's that? You showed me what it felt like to be powerless. To have your life altered by someone else's decisions. To realize that the world doesn't revolve around your comfort or convenience. She smiled, and it was the first genuinely warm expression I'd ever seen from her. It was exactly what I needed to learn. As we parted ways that afternoon, I realized that this was how real stories end, not with dramatic confrontations or perfect resolutions, but with quiet moments of understanding. With people choosing to be better than they were before. With the recognition that everyone is fighting battles we can't see, carrying pain we don't understand. The teenage Marcus who'd been humiliated in those high school hallways could never have imagined this ending. Not because he lacked imagination, but because he couldn't have conceived of a world where his tormentor might genuinely change, where justice might look like healing instead of revenge. But maybe that's the most profound transformation of all, learning that the stories we tell ourselves about other people are usually incomplete. That everyone is capable of growth, of change, of becoming someone worthy of forgiveness. Even when they don't deserve it. Especially then. Because in the end, forgiveness isn't about what other people deserve. It's about who we choose to become when we're given the power to heal or to hurt. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we choose to heal.